This episode's sponsors are the Navy Special Operations Foundation is the only foundation that exists to exclusively serve the men and women and the families of the Navy Special Operations community. NSOF exists to ensure that our operators and their families are provided with all the tools necessary to overcome any challenges they face and to ensure that they are never alone in the fight. To learn more about the organization, request support, or make donations, please visit nsof.org.
Messing around, like trying things with the demo range and getting rid of the, all the Code H stuff. It was just it was a phenomenal place to for, I guess, a team member, to really develop.
Welcome to the Echo Oscar Delta podcast, where we talk to Navy EOD techs and hear the stories that they want to share. All ideas, thoughts, and statements are those of the guest and the host of Echo Oscar Delta, and not of Navy EOD or Navy as a whole. All right, today we have Dan Bertozzi. Did 8 years, pretty much all of it as Navy EOD, right?
Yep.
And then inside those 8 years, did 3 deployments, 2 amazing CSG deployments. Our favorite, and one to Djibouti. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So you've been out for a little while now, and you're still semi-close to the area, so it's cool that you'd be able to just kind of drive down and sit down and do this. So.
Yeah.
When you went through EOD school, how was that process for you?
It was nil.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. This is good to work out the kinks early in our thing. EOD school. I guess I'll rewind real quick.
Yeah.
And say one thing. I think my time in the Navy. Something that I'd always come back to is appreciation.
Yeah.
I think every phase of joining the Navy. I had something in boot camp. Kind of a moment in dive school and then a moment in EOD school. Every time, something would happen and I'd just be like, wow, I am really lucky to be here. Yeah. And I think EOD school, it was the first time I was get the other branches. It's usually it was just Navy techs or Navy divers or, the motivators at boot camp and stuff.
Yeah.
But school was the first time I was you're talking to Air Force EOD techs and
right. Army
EOD techs and the Marines. And it's just it was wow, I was this is just wild. I was I don't know how I got here. I was but I was just so appreciative that I I guess was in something that was really cool or
Yeah.
It's a poor way of saying that, but
how'd you find EOD? Did you know about it coming in, or did you find out about it in boot camp, or?
Yeah. So I actually wanted to make the joke that how I found out about EOD was, going over to see my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
It was a Toyota Tacoma in the driveway, and there was a specimen of a man, inside, but I couldn't tell that. No. So, actually funny story how I found EOD was, I always wanted to join the military. I think a lot of guys in the community, I think just wanted to serve, or at least that's how I felt. And I actually went to the recruiting office, and the only guy there was some Army sergeant. And I was hey man, I want some more information. Tell me about it. I'm ready to join.
Yeah.
And he ended up making an appointment coming over my house. And I remember after he gave his presentation, how cool it is to be deployed overseas and working with other groups and this and that. The last thing he said to me was, as he closed his binder, was hey man, the Army is the easiest thing you'll ever do in your entire life. And I was immediately turned off by that. I was man, I don't want to do something that's easy.
Yeah.
So the next week I went back and no one was at the recruiting station except a Navy dude. And I was hey man, I want to do something, I want to join the military. The Army's not for me. I want to do something cool. What do you have?
Yeah.
And that's when he's oh, hey, we got a motivator in the area. He can teach you about, or, tell you about the special programs and stuff. He's head out, go to one of these workouts or a PST or whatever, and kind of learn, about some of the jobs. And I guess fast forward, I went out, kind of watched some of the guys do a PST, and there was a SEAL chief and a retired SWCC dude. And he was hey man, best 2 jobs in the military or in the Navy were SEAL and EOD. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, you know, I know nothing. I was like,
Yeah.
I watched a movie about, you know, some SEAL movie or whatever. And it's like, but I knew nothing about EOD. And the SEAL chief actually said, he's like, listen, man, he's like, you know, kind of told me a little bit. He's like, I think EOD, if I could do it again, he's like, I would have went EOD.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. I was like, really? I was like, that's, you're not really selling, like, you know, try to do the whole
Right.
SEAL thing. But yeah, so that's kind of, everything was just kind of luck. From then on, it's like, okay, well, you know, I started training for PST, you know, and got my scores and was like, okay, well, let's go EOD. And then I was like, hey, you got a contract. And I was like, cool, you know,
Yes.
like EOD. And then, yeah, that's kind of how it started. So, yeah.
Is that why? So finding it kind of that way, is that why, as you're going through, you kind of felt that, like, you know,
Yeah.
how am I here?
Yeah. You know what I'll tell you is, I told you I had like a moment at every phase, and it was like, I remember being in boot camp, and, you know, you're part of one of those special programs, you know, divisions or whatever. And it was like, we'd get up a little bit earlier and go do a workout or go to a pool workout, or at least they were doing that when I joined, in 2013. But, I remember getting beat, you know, it was like the first like real beating we had. And I remember just like getting smoked and like looking up and being like, dude, this is so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's like with a bunch of dudes, and it's just like, we're just getting beaten on the side, and people were like making noises and stuff, and they're like moaning. I'm like, it's like, act like a man, you know? Like, and I was like, whoa, I was like, whatever this is, I was like, I got lucky. And yeah. And so that was kind of the, you know, I'll go to the next step. It was like when I was in dive school, it was like after you got through the pool stuff, we started doing like open water dives. Mm-hmm. I remember we did this dive on a ship. Maybe it was like 60 foot, maybe it was like 45 feet or something. I don't know. It was like the first like open ocean. It was like, I remember going down and just being able to see everything.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know, 4 months in the Navy, or it felt like, you know, and I was just like, dude, I was like, I'm getting paid to breathe underwater. I was like, and I was just, I was like so silly at the time. I was, you know, 19, but I was like, dude, I was like, this is so cool. And I was like, and we haven't even gotten to the, you know, the cool parts yet, or the, you know, or the actual, any bit of the job, you know? So,
yeah, it is pretty crazy how quickly you go from, you know, you join the Navy and you don't really know, you know, no matter what they tell you, you still don't know what you're getting into, you know?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I've had the same thing where you're just, I loved getting the beatings. And then afterwards, then going out and doing some training, you're like, man, it was a good day. Like, if nothing else, like, I can go eat whatever I want after this. Yeah. I just burned off 3 days worth of calories.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, from then on, it was just like, I was always somebody that was like, appreciated, you know, I was like, hey, I need to slow down, you know, and just, you know, be thankful for whatever I have. And it was always like, oh, it's like me and the boys, you know, it's just like, we're having fun, or, you know, we're cracking jokes, or we're just like, or we're diving. And then it was like, yeah, by the time EOD school, it was like, I don't know, I guess looking back, I think everybody took that whole like part of the pipeline like very seriously. And I think it was pretty stressful. And it was like, oh, you're going to pass this test, or it was like one test at a time kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and you know what else? I'll kind of tie the appreciation thing into the, you know, talking about the carriers, because, you know, 2 carriers. And so anyway, I'll say when I was a new guy, I showed up at 6, and I started to learn a little bit more. You know, I finished the schoolhouse, go to some extra schools, and I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm happy to be here. Like everybody says, just show up, you know, have a good attitude, you know, be motivated, just like, you know, and I was just like, man, I appreciate this. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember showing up, and it was like, hey, you know, we're going to toss all the new guys on these teams. You're going to get your full workup, and then we're going to deploy. And I'm like, awesome. And then it was like the next day, it was like, hey, by the way, it was like one of these carrier teams needs an extra guy. I forget. I don't even remember how something happened to somebody. Actually, I think it was a dude that lost his crab or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were like, hey, so one of you guys, you know, it's I suppose every new guy knows when you're all circled up, some guy comes down from ops and he's like, hey, we're doing something, you know, or we're moving somebody. And it was like, hey, one of you guys might go to this carrier team, you know, we'll see. And we all like looked around and we're like, oh, like that wouldn't be ideal.
Right.
You know, it's like, so we even missed the first like workup. But then, you know, the next day it was like, hey, by the way, it's like, hey, Bertozzi, what's up, dude? I'm like, hey, and he's like, hey, you're on 2-2 now, you know, you're going on the carrier. And I remember going back to the appreciation thing, being like, you know what, like, I am so glad to now have a team or now, to have a family,
Yep.
But yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'm so glad that I did that carrier ride. Because everybody talks about you got to appreciate EOD and those, the deck seamen that are out there, like, chisel and paint and stuff. But like, when you see it, you're like, damn, dude, like, you're like, I am so thankful. And yeah. And I'll say two more things on the appreciation things on the carrier. It's like, we did a lot of like, it's one thing, like, because there were helicopters there, it was like, we got to do air ops all the time.
Yeah.
So that was something that was like, I forget what they're called, whatever, the squadrons.
Yep.
I don't know which one specifically, but like, they were like, hey, if you guys come out and train with us or fast rope with us and stuff, like, you can qualify our pilots, and whatever insertion methods. And so like, it was like every Friday, it was like rope after rope after rope after rope, like at night, with all our kit. I was like, dude, this is so awesome. It's like, and then you see the homies up on the bridge or whatever, like looking out, and there's like 5,000 people on that ship that would kill to like do that.
That's
and I'm like,
true.
Like, you know what? Like, I was like, this is awesome. And yeah, I could go on. I could go on and on about that. Like, first carrier ride. It was just like, yeah, I was like, yeah. And okay, I'll add something else too. So, and it was such a great deployment, because it was like 7 months long, or, I don't know if we can, say how long or whatever, but it was like, but I was off the boat for like almost half of it.
Nice.
So yeah, so it was like, 3 weeks in, UAE, training with those guys. It was like a month and a half total in like Bahrain, and like, I went to Kuwait for 3 weeks and stuff. And I got to like, see these other areas. Mm-hmm. So it was like by like month, I don't know, 5 or whatever, it was like, dude, I was like, been to like 5 different countries, and we stopped in Italy and France. And when we got off to see the Bahrain dudes, it was halfway through the deployment, and we got off and we're like, dudes, like, what's up? Good to see you. And they were just bitching up a storm. Like, dude, Bahrain sucks. Like, it's like, we're making all this money and we don't work on weekends. We don't wear uniforms. And I had to order out last night. And I'm like, I just came off the fucking carrier.
Right.
It's like, I just came off the carrier. But I was like, dude, you have nothing to complain about. Dudes were like, they had the gaming parties or whatever. Everyone was circled up playing, like Diablo, I think was up at the time. I was like, dude, I was like, I haven't had a weekend. Yeah. And like, I was like, anyway. So I just like, that kind of set the tone for like the rest of my time in the Navy. It was like, hey, it was like, I did the carrier. Like, I saw, what some of the other teams were doing and stuff. And I saw what everyone else on the ship was doing. So I was like, very early on, I was like, this is the greatest job. I was like, I think by that point I was like, dude, this is the best job in the Navy for sure. So.
Yeah, dude, I think there's obviously negatives to everything, right? But how negative it is, a lot is determined by you making sure that you have a perspective for it. Mm-hmm. And my first team ended up being a carrier as well. Supposed to go to Iraq, and then we didn't. So I went to a carrier. Slight change. But yeah, same kind of thing. My leadership did a good job of looking out, reaching out, finding things for us to do. And yeah, I remember exactly the same thing. You go, eventually there's, people that come to the shop all the time from the ship, and whether we had guys that came to the shop that wanted to go EOD or some other thing. And then we also had guys that came to the shop because they were cool. Yeah. And they just, really they were hiding out and we didn't care. But, you'd realize like what they were doing for a daily life. Mm-hmm. And then, you're told, oh, you're going to go off early before we go into this port, and you're going to go stay way away from everything and train with whatever group you're going to train with and have a bunch of liberty. And then the carrier is going to be in. And so then you're going to have liberty for that. And then you're going to leave with the carrier. Okay, cool. And then, by the way, the half of you that didn't get to go off early, you're going to stay late and you're going to do extra fun things.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, you know, it doesn't always happen, but it is. It's a perspective thing. I remember, I don't remember if I said this on here, but my first deployment, there was a dude. So I would stand I actually stood the majority of the flight deck watches. And I remember there was this AO2 Cox and he was always in trouble, but literally so much trouble that I'm pretty sure it's not allowed, but his friends would bring him hot plates because they would not let him go down and get meals. And you see that and you're like, dude, I have it so good.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, it's our quote unquote worst deployment, but it's really a perspective worst because it doesn't have to be.
I'll tell you what, the carrier is, I'd say it's fascinating. I think that's the word I want to use. It's fascinating. I think when you understand how it works, you understand how big it is, you know, how fast, and, you know, when you see just planes, that deployment, it was like, I forget what the numbers were, but it was like, let me just say for, I don't know, 12 hours a day, it was like planes were taking off nonstop. And it was just like, and they were leaving with a bomb on each side and they were coming back empty. Yeah. Every single time. I don't remember what it was, if it was like 1,200 or 1,400 or like something. It was like crazy. And I was like, to see that, you know, see like a a jet take off the first like 3 times is the sickest shit ever. Yeah. You know, and then like, you know, 500, 600 times, then it's like, you know, it's pretty dumb. Same thing with landing, you know? And yeah, but I'll tell you what, like, people tell stories about like, oh, if, you know, if you need something and, you know, you go to the guy and, you know, and supply and you give them, you know, you trade something from, you know, that you have, or you hook them up and they hook you up. Like, that shit is so real. Yeah. It's like real in the Navy, but it's like on the boat, it is like legit. Oh yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think it's been long enough now. So obviously, like, I think our thing was, we would do shoots, and we had the 107 for the cow, and we would do shoots, and we would, you know, get the CO or the XO, or we do like, you know, kind of like hookups and get people out, and we made friends with the admirals, you know, the galley staff. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man, the food. I'll tell you what. That another fascinating thing. The difference in food from the E6 and below to the Chiefs mess is like, we had guys like bring stuff back from the Chiefs mess, and we're like, is this milk? Yeah. It's like, you have like milk, or that like chicken, or like quesadillas or the shit. But like yeah, we used to take some of the CSs out, and then they would like bring us like, you know, steaks and wings and like stuff like that. And I was like, it was just wild, but yeah, it was pretty fascinating. So, but. Yeah, I remember watching both deployments. Like, just like you said, at the beginning of the deployment, going up and standing at flight deck watch and watching the planes come in. My favorite thing was watching them land. Just because, like, you'd see, depending on the crew that was in there, everybody would get all excited and, you know, be taking fake bets on, like, all right, he's a mile out. Is he going to make it? Yeah, he's a little low. We used to do that all the time. Or somebody would say, like, especially my last deployment too, we had some like newer guys. I guess I was the new guy that was, you know, saying silly stuff like that on the first deployment. We had some new guys first deployment on the last, on my second carrier. And like, sometimes we'd say that like last couple, like, oh, you know, are we done for the night? Is he landed? And it's just like, looking back, I'm like, wow, like, where were we? Right. That was like, that we were just, you know, losing it over that. But, yeah. You know, and I do want to address, you know, with the second carrier ride, so I actually like kind of volunteered for it. Yeah. It was brought up when I was in Djibouti, and phenomenal, the greatest deployment. I was I asked to go. They were like, hey, like, that first team, you just did a carrier, like, we might be able to hook you up here. Like, where do you want to go? And I was like, well, I saw, you know, Bahrain, UAE, like some of these other places. And I was like, that's fine. But I was like, I want to go to Africa. Yeah. And it was just, I mean, phenomenal. It was just us out there, like, we were diving, like, I stood up on my first wakeboard out there, like, nice. Just, like, messing around, like, trying things with, like, you know, the demo range and getting rid of the, you know, all the Code H stuff. It was just like, it was a phenomenal place to, like, for, I guess, a team member, you know, to really develop, you know, some I don't know, some confidence with tools and different shots and different stuff like that. So, but yeah, at the end of that deployment, it was like, hey, like, next go around, we're kind of putting people in positions, they're picking up LPOs and stuff. And I was like, dude, I wanted to be an LPO more than anything else. I was like, dude, like, now that I like know how things, how the teams go and stuff, I was like, I just want to be an LPO. And they were like, hey, there's a carrier team. Your name's kind of getting brought up here since you have some experience. Is this something you'd be interested in? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, nothing sounds better than going back out and, farming out somewhere.
Yeah.
50% of the time.
Right.
So that was I was like, dude, we'll get some, get some of the boys, some new guys. We get to go through the cycle. Like, I was like, it was basically like me and the team chief were like the only team leaders. And then everyone else was on their first ride.
Right.
So I was like, dude, I was like, I love that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I volunteered for it, but then we got out there, and I think like 2 weeks in, it was like, oh, hey, by the way, COVID. I was like, no, that's sick. Like, what's that mean for us? And it's like, oh yeah, we're not getting off the boat. And then it was like 206 days later, so it was like 7 months of like staying on the boat. So it was like,
that is tough.
It was an experience.
Yeah.
It was. I would say it was an experience. Yeah. So.
I mean, we followed you guys, and
oh yeah,
and we got three ports, and we got to fly a couple people off, and just getting the 3 ports and not getting to go explore because COVID. So is what they call them. Oh man, I forget what they call it.
Still beach picnics.
Yeah, is it? Well, no. Seal Beach is on the carrier, right?
Yeah. Are you talking about when you don't pull into port?
No, when you pull into port, but you can't.
Oh. When they set up like the little cities.
Yeah. Whatever it's called, but yeah. So they blocked off a spot on the pier, and then you can't go outside that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was better than nothing, but. Not by a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just makes it a lot harder. Like, and really, again, looking at the perspective side, right? Like I got on there and the ship's company had done everything with you guys and now they were doing it again. And this was my first time. So I'm like, I'm going to be a little bit appreciative right now.
Yeah.
Like, as much as this stinks for me, like
I was gonna say, was it like a 4 or 6 month turnaround or something like that? It was
it was short.
Yeah,
it was not optimal, as they say.
Yeah, I could not imagine.
Yeah,
but
that's all right.
Yeah, got me thinking back to the carrier memories. But
how was Djibouti?
So Djibouti was awesome. Yeah, I kind of mentioned it was like after the first carrier ride, it was like, dude, I was like, Africa, I was like, I haven't, I have no idea what's going on there. It sounds like the guys have some freedom over there. It sounds like they're just doing something a little bit different. And I think that was my biggest thing. I was like, I didn't know what they were doing, and it sounded like more freedom. Yeah. But yeah, we got out there, and obviously the mission was, the diving mission, the ATFP mission. But yeah, it was just us. I think the head shed was in Bahrain. It was like, we got into a really good groove of, it was like so weird too, because all the dives were at like 2 a.m. or something, or like, really? It was like, all the dives were at like, I don't know, between like 1 and like 3:30 in the morning or something like that. So it was like, you could never really get a good like night's sleep. Yeah. You kind of get like, I don't know, a couple hours and then try to, I don't know, either make it through the rest of the day or try to get some sleep in the morning. But, no, I thought that was like the greatest deployment ever for, I guess that was 2018, so it was like, I don't know. When I first got there, I was like, man, I just, so stupid looking back, or kind of silly looking back, but it was like, man, I just want to go to war, or I just like want to go to the desert. Like you hear all these guys like telling stories and it's like, dude, like, I just like, I don't know, like I just want to contribute and I just like want to do something, and then once you find out, it's like, okay, well, here's all our missions, and it's just like, and then only one team is kind of doing something that's, like kind of close to that. But then, I don't know, it's like, but then it's even, maybe for them, it's a maybe for them. So it's like, I was like, all right. And I was like, let me just get, try to get good at, driving the robot and being a team member and, and contributing on the team and, getting quals and stuff like that. But anyway, so I think Djibouti was, I said, like the greatest deployment. It was like, we were out there, working out, playing speedball, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
It was like we were diving. And then we had like a base response, mission. So it was like, it was good to, I guess, stay like fresh enough, I guess, or doing the base response kind of stuff. But yeah, then there was a lot of, like, I don't think we did much like spearfishing.
Yeah.
Like, I think like teams in the past would go out all the time. But like, it was like, yeah, when we got there and it was like the compound had been like built up pretty well. It was like you open this Connex box and it was like, oh, there's a couple tubes in there, like a couple wakeboards, and it was like, and we have a nice boat. Like, it's like maybe we should, maybe we should utilize this a little bit. It was awesome. Like we'd go out to the demo range, and there was always stuff to like get rid of.
That's cool.
So it was a really great place to like, hey, try different things out, or or did a bunch of burns out there and stuff.
Nice.
So it was just like, I think it was a good, it was like a good mix of like everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I love that. I love that deployment. And food was great, obviously, at Camp Lemon. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they when getting that mix of things, I think is, you're right. Everybody, the majority of people, I think, really since 2001 to 2020, people came in to do the war thing, right? That's why most of us joined, is, that image in our head. But really, like, that's the image in our head. But really, like, the more I think about it even now, is really what I wanted to do was utilize the skills that I've been taught. And yeah, that is still like, it's in there, right? But getting to go to the range and get rid of a bunch of stuff, do a bunch of demo, like doing burns, like that, not super common for most. Like there's not a ton of places that have burn ranges, right?
Yeah.
So being able to actually do that kind of stuff makes you feel like, man, I'm an EOD tech, like I actually did some things.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. And I get it. It's like you come in and you talk to some of these guys that have been in, much long, 5-10 years longer than you. And, they just have all the cool stories, or they, have all the cool, or what you would consider the really cool deployments, because they're actually doing the job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for just the time frame that, I was like, if I'm not going to go do, like whatever mission or that kind of stuff, I just thought it was like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually forgot I was just going to bring something up, but totally forgot what it was, but
that happens to me all the time.
Yeah. Just thought of a good story, but yeah.
Yeah. I think again, that, man, it really is like a kind of a theme, that perspective thing though, like not focusing too much on it would be good. And I know it's hard, and I say this and like, I didn't do it, but it would be better if when I came in, I was focusing more on doing the individual skills at some point, as opposed to trying to get a specific mission, right? Like a specific type of deployment. Just trying to be able to do those skills, even if it's here going to, a shore det that's doing a range cleanup or whatever. Those kind of things where, like, you walk down range, you're like, oh, there's a mortar that was kicked out. Cool.
Yeah.
Guess we got to take care of it, like.
Yeah. And it's so funny, because like, I'm still, I don't know, it's like guys that had different deployments or joined earlier than I did. It was like that kind of stuff, what you're talking about for me, it's like, that shit's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just like, and that's, we're like actually doing something, or disposing of something, or clearing the range or whatever, and yeah, I was just like, I don't know. I mentioned like early on, I was like, dude, after I saw a little bit more of the Navy, I was like, dude, EOD is easily the best job in the Navy.
Yeah.
But like, as I was on my second team, and I was like, I'd tell friends all the time back home, we'd talk or whatever, like, hey, how's the Navy thing going, or how's the military thing? And I was like, dude, I'm just so satisfied.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I didn't even have to, have crazy deployments. It was like, well, they're like, well, you know, what's your job like or whatever? And it's like, dude, it's like 1 week, you know, we're down in Key West, you know, or something. We're diving, you know, we're diving for 2 weeks, you know, and it's just like, but then we're going out, you know, hanging out and that kind of stuff. And anyway, but like fun dives, you know, it's like we're getting our time, we're getting our depth, but it's like I've been to Key West like 4 times, like all paid for. It's like, and then we do that for 2 weeks, and then you get back and you're like, all right, I'm done diving, you know, like I'm over that. And then it's like, cool. Now we're going to the range for a few days. And it's like, oh, cool. And then we're like shooting, you know, for a few days. And we're like working on that stuff and training. It's like, oh, the end of the week, and actually we're going to go to, you know, blow some stuff up or play with some tools or, you know, kind of hone those skills. And you're like, awesome. Because, you know, you shoot thousands and thousands of rounds and you're like, okay, like, I'm good with that.
Exactly.
You know? But then it's like, cool. And it's like, oh, what are we going to do next? And it's like next 2 weeks, it's like surface drills. And then it's like, you know, then chem bio stuff, you know, a couple weeks. And it's like, you know, then the nuke stuff. And then it's like, and I was like, oh yeah, we got an air week coming up or whatever, you know, it's like, and then, excuse me. And then, you know, then you're doing, you know, fast rope and rappelling and like casting and stuff like that. And you're like, oh dude, you know, let's go. And then it's like, and then you go jumping and it's like, and then 6 months just went by.
Right.
You know, and then it's like, oh, cool. Well, it's time to dive again. Yep. And you're like, dude, I love diving, you know? And it's just like, and it was just like always fresh. You know, so it's like, you know, when people are like, you know, complaining about like, oh, it's like, dude, it's like, if you knew what the rest of the military, you know, or just any other job, what their day-to-day life was, it was like, this is literally the best job in the military. Right. I was like, it's like, I don't know, you talk to friends from other, you know, other MOSs or other rates or whatever, and they tell you about like the best part of their job. It's like, oh yeah, like once every 6 months we go to the range, you know, and you're like, you know, nice. It's like, or maybe it's once every year or something. Or their thing is shooting, you know, or their thing is like, oh, I'm, you know, some of my aircrew buddies, they're like, they just do circles, you know, in the helicopter. Like, dude, I'm like, it's like, you know, nice. You know, it's like, but we do that and then we get out and then you go back up and finish your circles. It's like we get the best part of like whatever it is. It's like, you know, diving or shooting or jumping. And some guy's like, oh, buddy, it's like, oh yeah, dude, like I can't wait to go to like static line. And some Army buddies, or go to airborne. And I was like, dude, like static line's cool. It's like, so you go free fall. It's like right. It's like, you know, instead of the dumbest thing ever, but you know, it's just like getting hurt, I suppose, on, you know, static line is the dumbest thing ever. But so anyway, just like, I just am very appreciative and very satisfied with, you know, just about every bit of, you know, 8 years. It's like, I definitely had that kind of like, I think everybody kind of fights it a little bit. It's like, man, I wish I was doing, you know, my job like I saw in the posters or I heard in the stories or, you know, or just like hearing people. But it's just like, it's like, man, I was like, I'm just so thankful for, you know, like all the people I came across and all like the cool shit that like you get paid to do. Right. You know, it's just like, and most of that stuff you can do after the fact, you know, you can still jump, you can still shoot, you can still dive, you know? Yeah. And like through it, for the diving, they make it pretty good to where you can get, your, you know, military dive qual, but you can get your civilian thing out of it for a very minimal amount of money. Same thing for the jumping. You know, you can get your A license, your B license, depending on how much you jump, your C license. Like, you know, you can get all of those for minimal amounts of money instead of paying, you know, I don't even know how much it is, but you know, 7 jumps for free fall, right? For the accelerated free fall, multiple instructors. Oh yeah. The classes before, like thousands of dollars. I got buddies that pay thousands of dollars. Yeah. You're like, oh. And we're just like, here's my $25 for my A license. And stuff like the tunnel too. Like, oh dude. It's like people are like, oh yeah, you know, I got 2 minutes of tunnel time and like, I can't go again anytime soon or whatever. Because I just spent, you know, a couple $100. It's like, oh yeah, like, I hate paying for the tunnel. You know, like, it's like, I just had to suffer through an hour slot where only 4 guys showed up. Man, that was broke my bank. So it's so funny. Like going back to, you know, I was like, that goes back to like when I realized, I was like, wow, like what we're getting paid to do. And then I do the carrier, you know, first time. It's like, then when I would hear guys like bitch about something, it's like, bro, like, it's like, shut up. It's like, come on. It's like, go on the carrier. Like, you know. And it's not to say that you can't want to do something different, right? But understanding what's actually out there, and then what the alternatives are, gives you that appreciation where it's not just every 2 seconds complaining about, well,
I should be here. I should be there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even if you do 20 plus years, right? You're still not, there is to an extent a little bit of preference, right? Because you've done a lot of time, but you're still not necessarily owed a specific thing.
Right.
Whatever the Navy needs, I hate to say it. Oh, I'm so old now. Whatever the Navy needs is what you're going to do. And then you bring that down, whatever the mobile unit needs, you know, like, yeah, you may be a 24 years senior chief. And if you just did a company ride and the only thing left and you've still got sea time is a company ride and there's nobody to fill that, you're probably doing another company ride, you know, like, you know, and you bring that all the way down. So, but at the end of the day, like, is that really the worst thing in the world? You know, you still get paid to do all these things that we're talking about. And yeah, it's,
Yeah. And I give a lot of credit too to the guys that, I'm not 100% sure like what your situation was on the, you know, on the carrier ride, you know, after the fact. Cause I was kind of checking out, you know, during that, you know, when I got back and stuff. But like on the first deployment or my first carrier, we had, I guess we had two guys swap out, kind of at the last second.
Yeah.
We had one of the guys come in, one of our chiefs, and you know, it's like, it's kind of crazy. I like give you guys credit because I was like, I never hear like guys that, you know, like hop into those positions or they just got back from something or they, you know, it was like a last minute thing. It was like, oh, hey, yeah, you just checked in, or like, you know, I think Mason said something like, I was re-listening to his episode, and he was talking about like when he checked in, I was like, oh, hey, we don't have a team for you, but like, hey, you know, you're going and you're doing this. Yeah. And I give like guys credits, like, cause especially guys that were, you know, chiefs or senior to me at that time. I was like, man, you are the example. I was like, you do that, like no questions asked.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you complain. I didn't hear you complain.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I'm sure some people like, but you're here and you have a good enough attitude about it. It's like, you know, and you're like looking out for our best interest. And it's like, okay, like, wow, like that's, you know, that's the type of people that I want to work for or work with, you know? Yeah. Oh, I just had another one, another good one too. That I was going to bring up with the appreciation thing, but you know what I'll say though? I'll share kind of like my first, like, you know, mini beef. I think I am so thankful for the community.
Yeah.
You know, I just like, I just look at where my life is right now and I'm like, wow, like I am the person I am today, like because of this community. It's like, I think like I'm a big on like the mindset and like, or just like the mindset shift that I had. It was like, hey man, it's like whatever you think you're capable of, like you're capable of so much more. And it was just like, I think during the entire pipeline, it was just a constant like stretching. And it was just like, man, it was like, I used the kind of like the example back home when I talked to buddies that, you know, weren't in the military and they're like, you know, what do you mean? And I was like, imagine, you know, that you could do, you know, 60 push-ups, you know, and you think, you know, I'm a 60 push-up guy. It's like you go to that first like workout or that first beat down and it's just like, you know, you're at 59, 60 and you're like, wow, like nice. I'm done, you know? And then they're like, and then you just sit there and he's like, you know, who's ever leading? They're like, down. And you're like, what? Like, you know, and I think a lot of people take this for granted, you know, it's like, but then it's like those initial, like, you know, beat downs, it's like, wait, like somehow I just squeezed out 10 more,
right.
You know? And it's just like, and it's crazy how strong, you know, like those like mental limitation or those mental, you know, things on you, but it's like, well, it's like I'm not a 60 push-up, I'm a 70 push-up guy, you know? And then it's like, you go to dive school and then you just like, you know, I don't know. It's like, and it's just a constant like stretching and you're like, wow, like we are literally capable of so much more,
right.
You know? And I think a lot of people like take that for granted. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're, well, I know you're 100% right. You know, like every person individually, you've got whatever you've done last. Maybe you're like, okay, I saved a little bit. I can do a little bit more than that. Right. And then you could probably actually do a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
But then you get around a bunch of guys and not necessarily because we're competing, even though we tend to do that too. But just because you're with other people that are suffering too. And you're like, man, just because you're with other people that are suffering, you can do even more than what you individually could do. I remember, so I love free fall now. I was very scared when I did static line. And I remember thinking when we were standing in the plane, because this is one of those things if I never came to the military, I 100% can guarantee you that I never would have even thought about jumping out of a plane.
Right.
But because it's part of my job, I totally lied. I totally lied on my interview coming in. Master Chief Carr asked me, "Hey, you have to jump out of airplanes, right? You scared of that?" And I was like, "No, Master Chief." Absolutely, I was.
It's the only answer you can give there.
Exactly. Yeah. But I remember thinking when I was at Airborne and we're in the plane and we're all hooked up and we're standing there, the only thing that went through my head was the guy before me is going to do it. The guy behind me has to do it. I have to do it. And I just repeated that over and over until I was in that chaotic wind, crazy loud noise. And then all of a sudden it was silent.
Yeah.
And thankfully there's a parachute above it. But yeah, it's crazy how much you're capable of alone. But then when you get yourself around that group of people, how much even beyond that you're actually capable of.
Oh yeah. And I guess I didn't finish, what I started there with my first like beef, but I think that's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think the community, and I think other programs, obviously, but or other like special programs, but like EOD is so good about like building you up, and it's just like by the time it was like, and I guess I have another story I'll share here in a second, but I think it's like my first thing is like we get so, I don't know, so confident and so competent and so good, and it's just like, wow, we're like, guys start to get, we're like, wow, we're like, I'm kind of shit hot, like I like know my stuff, like I am better than like, and then you kind of show up to the mobile unit, or you could get back from your first carrier deployment or whatever, and then you're like, hold on, like let me look at these other guys around me, and it's like, okay, like I need to humble myself before somebody else humbles me. So I think like my first like mini beef is I've worked with some guys since I got out. I work up in Northern Virginia. It's kind of like my first, plug here. There's a ton of jobs up there for guys that are getting out, a bunch of contracting jobs. And I'll kind of like talk about, how you like find them later and stuff. But like, I hear guys are like, and I don't know what I do if I get out. And it's like, listen, like you can go into a government contracting job immediately and get good money and then figure it out. Because I was like, I promise you, there are a ton of jobs, and they're not just like, there are jobs where you deploy overseas and you go clear this or go support that. There are those, but there's a ton of jobs, all over the place, but especially up there. But anyway, I worked with a couple guys, retired Air Force tech, retired Navy tech, an Army tech that was senior to me, and then another Navy tech actually that came from 6. But anyway, it's like I think that my beef being those guys showed up. And I think they just had that like EOD like humbleness about them, and then we had this like the dude that they worked for was like this. He was in the Army. He was in for like 3 years. He was like a specialist, and then he got hurt. He got out, and he comes in and he's like just like talking to these dudes like they're fucking assholes.
Yeah.
And the dudes are just, we have this like EOD like, okay, like whatever, man, just like very humble, and I was like, I'm about to flip the fuck out on that dude. Like, I was like, he doesn't know who the fuck you guys are. Like, I was like, I cannot get over. But I think it's just like, that's my first thing. I was like, bro, I was like, you guys shouldn't be putting up with that. Like, you guys are, 22 and 24 years, like, like retired. Like, I was like, I don't know. So I think that's my first, like, it's like, I think people can be, it comes back to like writing resumes and stuff too. It's like people like bragging about themselves or not being able to.
Right.
And it's just like I showed up to this job and like there was, I don't know, 10 other people like on my contract and stuff. And within like the first 90 days, I was like, whoa, I was like, it's not even close. I was like, I am the most competent person here.
Yeah.
I was like, it is ridiculous, for my, contract.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I went in at 90 days and I was like, hey, like, we got that 90-day meeting or whatever. And the boss was like, yep, like, let's do it tomorrow. And I told some of the guys on contract, I was like, I'm going to go in there and ask for a raise. He's like, you can't ask for a raise at the 90-day mark. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, that's not how that works. I was like, says you. I was
Right.
like, I was like, you're an idiot. So I walked in there, but anyway, it's that mentality. It's like, and I walked in there. I was like, hey man, like, how do you like, what I'm providing for you? He's like, oh man, you're incredible. Like, we need more people like you. And it wasn't even me being above and beyond. It was like, the minimal like Navy EODs, the minimal standard, like showing up to work and like doing what you're supposed to. And he's like, dude, you're incredible. Like, we need more of you around here. It's like awesome. And he's like, what do you got for me? And I was like, hey, we agreed on this. You wanted this from me, and you said you'd pay me that. I actually came here and realized that you need like 5 more things that we didn't talk about. And he goes, all right. And I'm gonna go, so I want a raise. He goes, usually we don't do that. I was like, I believe you. I was like, I bet you don't. He's like, well, I'm not sure. I'm like, this is me officially requesting it at my 90-day, whatever. I was like, and here's my explanation. And I was like, let me know. He's like, all right, I'll talk to my boss. Next day he came back and he's like, hey man, got good news. We got you that raise.
That's awesome.
And I was like, yeah, but it was like, all that to say, like, it was like, I think if I just jumped out of the military and immediately went to work, jumped out of the community and met these other 10 dudes standard, like, I was like, I wouldn't have done that,
Yeah.
Or it's like, I didn't even have like a motivation. I was like, the money was fine. I just wanted to see if I could.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and it worked.
Yeah.
And that was like the first of 2. I went back, 9 months later or whatever, because it got officially brought up.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think that's like, I don't know, my like first beef is like, it's like, I think we like, at least myself, I tried to humble myself. I was like, listen, I look at these guys, these chiefs, senior chiefs, master chiefs that have been in forever. I was like, I shouldn't be saying anything. I should not be bragging about anything. I should not, like, I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So let me humble myself now, before somebody else does. And I think it's like important to know, like, when you leave, it's like, okay, like, there are people that are, whatever metric you want to, compare yourself to, but there are people that have more responsibility, people that make more money, people that have it harder. And I was like, you guys need to, like, we need to be aware of our self-worth here. And I was like, what the standard is for, a lot of the population. And it's kind of like my first, like, kind of like my first beef. It's like, the humbleness is important, but it's like, you can't overcorrect.
Right. I think it, like, the humbleness, and I agree. I think even inside of the military, the humbleness goes a little too far sometimes. And it's knowing when to be humble and knowing when to, you don't have to be cocky. You don't have to be boisterous and, like, you don't have to be an a-hole.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it's time for you to say your piece and you have the programmatics, the background, the expertise, say your piece,
Yeah.
And then once you're like, the humbleness comes in, like, okay, like, I said my piece, I'm not going to go crazy, but now I'm going to sit back and, okay, if my job was to say my piece and wait for a decision to be made, okay, like, whatever that decision that's going to be made, I'm going to go with that. You know, like, at a mobile unit, you're a team member and your chief says, hey, we've got, we're thinking about changing X, Y, or Z. Like, what do you guys have? Say it. Just because you're a new guy doesn't mean you don't have an opinion, even though that's what we tell every new guy, right?
Right.
But it's true, like, you look at some of the people coming in too, and like, there's literally new guys that have masters in, like, chemical engineering and, like, just other big words. And you're like, all right, maybe we should actually ask this guy something. Like, he probably knows more than I do, even though I taught chem for a while, whatever. But yeah, like, speak up, and then okay, now it's time to be humble and just like, I think you made the wrong decision, but gonna go with what you guys made because it's the military. That's the way it works, you know. But yeah, man, I see that a lot too. I see that because I think a lot of that can come from just our eval process, because it's terrible. It's terrible to try and write how great you are. And I think part of that, though, is because we look at it as writing how great you are, and it's not really what it's supposed to be. And I'm just now learning that, after 17 plus years. But it's just straight up like, what did you do? Who did it benefit? That's what that is.
Right.
But we look at it as like, oh, I got to write how great I am, and I hate doing that. And so then we're just like, I did a few things.
Yeah. It's hard too, because I think, maybe it's just, I don't know, I guess my experience, I'm not sure if it applies to anybody else, but it's like when I showed up to the mobile unit, it was almost like it didn't really matter. It was like, yeah, quals were like important, you know, but it was a thing that the things that people were like wanted to have on their evals were like, oh, I went to, you know, this deployment, I supported this group, you know, I, you know, diffused or disarmed this many IEDs. It was like this many people were saved. Like, it was like those kind of things. And it's like, all right. And so it's hard, you know, to say like, oh, I got to talk about all these, you know, I don't know. Anyway, it's hard to like brag about stuff. It's like, oh, like how many dives did you soup on scuba to 20 feet, you know, where it's like, where you're just doing like, it's hard to like, try to like make that, I don't know, look or feel sexy when somebody else is like, oh, I just went on this deployment and I actually like, you know, oh, I did a mine strike, you know, except in real life, you know, it's like, oh, like, I don't even want to do any of that, you know, like, just put me last, you know, like, yeah. And was there anything you want to talk about next? Or
go for it.
You know, I'll say too, kind of back on the appreciation thing is I actually I'm very thankful for, like each team I had a kind of like a big, maybe like a big, like growing, you know, or a big like growing point or like lesson. I think it was on my first team. I showed up and there were two guys at the mobile unit, huge fans, love these guys, Wes and Sam, keg busters. But, you know, so I spent a lot of time with Wes and he deployed on our first team. But like when we showed up and it was like, hey, like, you know, we got to start learning stuff or, you know, getting in the pubs, or we would do, you know, ask the new guys some questions and stuff like that. Yeah, I remember like responding like pretty early, you know, obviously my answer was incorrect, you know, but he was like, hey, like, you know, how far do you got to be for, you know, this NEW or whatever, you know, for K whatever. And it was like, and I gave him a number and he's like, or he's like, or where would you be safe at? And I'm like, oh, you know, 100 feet or whatever. He's like, why did you say that? Or like, where did that come from? I'm like, what do you mean? You know, he's like, no, like, where did that come from? Like, where did you get that from? And, you know, all that to say was like, so immediately it was important for me to like, you know, if I was going to open my mouth or if I was going to say something or teach something or, you know, it was important that I like knew, I don't know, I guess I'll say like they upheld a standard. It was like, if you're going to advise, you know, somebody, or if you're going to teach a class, or if you're going to like spit some knowledge, you know, it should be like real, you know, it should be like, you know, have some like evidence behind it. It should be like, you know, you can either read it somewhere or you've had some experience, or this is what, you know, Tutu's putting out, or like it like needed to be something. And I was like, oh, man, it was a very ugly way to, you know, say it. Was just like upholding a standard that was like, it was like, nah, man, like, it's like, you know, I'm going to hold you to a standard 100% of the time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow, okay. It's like, this is the standard. And then it was like, and I, obviously, you know, we have that first conversation. It's like the first time you say something like stupid. And it's like, hey, man, you know, this shit matters because if you fuck up, people die. And it was just like, and it's not just like, oh, you're going to the schoolhouse and people die. It's like, look at your fucking team. And I'm like, it's like one of them. And I'm like, all right, like, you know, like, you're right. Like, you know, I should, like, if I'm going to say something or if I'm going to, like, you know, pass something on, it's like, that should be the standard. Right. You know, and I'm so thankful because that, like, you know, I guess that hit immediately. You know, it was like, you know, yeah. So that, like, so now it's like everything I do, it's like, hey, if I'm working, you know, up for TSA now or whatever, I'm building whatever, I'm teaching whatever, I'm, you know, passing on whatever. It's like, hey, like, I have that standard. It's like, if, you know, if I say something that's incorrect or I say something I don't really know or I can't like sell this or whatever, it's like, not only do I make myself look bad, but like, I don't know, I feel like I make the community look bad, you know, because, you know, some asshole or whatever. So I think that was like one of my, I don't know, important like lessons. It was like the standard.
Yeah.
And I also had like I guess on my second team too, it was like, I had another like growing. It was like, after I had that standard, it was like, okay, you know, I'm learning stuff. I'm in the pubs. Like, I feel really great being a team member, like all the tools and stuff. And we're going through like the, you know, the workup, and I feel like I'm doing everything. You know, it's like where I was that guy, you know, searching the ship or, you know, driving the robot and then going down is, you know, P2 and like, you know, just everything. Right. And I remember starting to get some confidence about me a little bit. And you know what, I'll say it because it was important as like a young man. You know, I had too much confidence. That was a little too loud.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'll shout out to Sam and Steve for my second team. They did a really good job of humbling me.
Yeah.
And I think like that was my first, like, it was like, as I was starting to ramp up here, it was like, that was my first like slap in the face. It was like, hey man, like, you need to chill out. Like, you know, and I think that was very important, you know, for where I was in life and for where I'm at in the rest of, you know, where I am now. It's like everything I do well or I accomplish or I, you know, yeah, whatever. It's like, okay, hey, there's somebody that is doing this a lot better. They're, you know, they're making a lot more money, or they're, you know, or they got up and did 2 workouts this morning or whatever. It's like, there's somebody that, you know, there's always many people that blow you out of the water. So it's like, so I don't want to hear you, you know, or at least that's a conversation like, you know, I'm having to myself. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think it's good to have those people that are willing. I appreciate the people that are willing to take time out of their day to actually correct me rather than just let me say stupid stuff and then be like, man, that guy's an idiot, you know? Because like that does neither of us any good, because now I can be that idiot that chooses the wrong thing and actually does potentially get us hurt. Or you could have just taken some time and been like, hey, man, you're an idiot. Like, get yourself together, correct yourself, you know, and hey, bonus points for them. Here's how you do that, you know? Like, and I think it's a testament to the small type of community that we're in and the small teams that we're on is like, you get invested in the people that are on your team because you know them.
Yeah.
And it makes it much more, makes you more willing to be able to take time and be like, hey, Dan, got something for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, talking about, like investing in, you know, it kind of just made me think about something too, is I'm actually surprised. I want to give like, another thing I'm so thankful for is like, I've had a lot of really great leaders in the military, in the community, you know. I mean, everyone's had some great leaders, and then you've had some, you know, some leaders that were, you know, that were fine. But I'll tell you what, I can't get over, you know, I went to in my current job, I went to kind of into like some real estate stuff. So like I went to an investors like retreat, in a couple of their like times since I've gotten out. And guys were just talking about, you know, how they're running their business or how they interact with like their people or like this and that. I was at this retreat and these guys are doing really great things. I mean, yeah, they're doing some, you know, big stuff, both investing, you know, as agents. They got a mortgage company, they got an insurance company. Like they're big time. They're doing really well. And yet they're like talking to us, people they've like just met like 48 hours ago or 36 hours ago. And they're like talking about how their like people suck. It's just like, man, like, you know, our people just like suck. We got to like, you know, coddle them through this and this and that. And it's just like, I just don't know why they're just like so stupid. And everyone's like kind of like circled around. They're like laughing and stuff. So like, yeah. And it's like, why can't people just be better? Like, why do these people just like everybody? And just like by like the second time he was saying it, he was basically saying everybody that worked for him was like an idiot.
Yeah.
And then this dude like made this comment and I was like, hey, man, and someone else was about to start talking. I was like, hey, hold on. I was like, you guys, it's like, I want to throw something in here. I was like, you guys talk about like, you know, you follow like Jocko and stuff and extreme ownership and like stuff like that. I was like, listen, I've been around some phenomenal leaders and I was like, and I've done quite a bit of like, you know, leadership, like training and reading and stuff like that. I was like, I'll tell you what, I was like, I've never heard, I was like, I assure you the greatest leaders like on the planet, like don't talk shit about their people to like other random people.
Right.
I was like, dude, it was like so like appropriate for the time. And it was just like the perfect, like, I don't know, like slap in the face. I was like, dude, I was like, it almost like makes you like look bad. Yeah. I was like, if your people are like not performing well, I was like, maybe if it's everybody that works for you,
right,
maybe it's not them, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just like, and everyone just kind of like sat there and they were like, I mean, it was just like well delivered.
Yeah.
And it was just like, damn. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I see what you're saying. He's like, that's a good point. And I was like, and then we kind of like went off and I was like, damn, I was like, he's basically like running this thing. And I just told him like, it's like, but I was like, it was like stuff like that. I was like, you don't, you know, yeah, it's like, you don't appreciate, like, it was like, you just, I don't know. I guess I'll say this is like when you have a great leader or a great OIC, great chief, great LPO or whatever, you know, somebody that like can get the job done.
Yeah.
But then also is like taking care of you, you know,
right,
and looking out for you and this stuff. It's like, you think that shit's everywhere.
Right.
But
yep.
I'll tell you what, it's like Yeah. I love the civilian world because it's like if you work hard, it's just, you can only promote so fast in the military.
Yeah.
And then eventually you can only go so high, but it's like the civilian world's crazy in that you can, I don't know, you can basically do whatever the fuck you want. Like if you want to start a company or if you want to, if you want to work in 2 different companies or you want to start, whatever, it's just like there's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought, I just thought every leader, every person in charge, I was like, that's the farthest thing from the truth.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I heard somebody, I don't know who it was, but it's probably on YouTube. But they were talking about, they were doing a conference kind of like that, right? And this guy was talking about his people, and he's like, I can't get them, I own this company, and I can't get my people to like want it as much as me and this and that and whatever. And he's like, yeah, no crap, dude. Like, it's your company. Yeah. You can't expect them to. But then also in addition to that, like I've heard a lot of, a lot of people talk about how people just aren't good at things, all the stuff you're saying. Right. And even when that is true, like when you look at it, that's actually why I like, to an extent, the military model of promoting from within, right? Because it's your job. It's the person who's in charge to make sure that the person who's below gets trained. So it's their job to train them.
Right.
And then if they don't perform, and if it's just one, it's probably that person. If it's everybody,
right.
Now you look, are you actually training them, right?
Right.
Just like in EOD, right? If we have one person on a team that just doesn't get it, it's probably that person.
Yeah.
If the whole team is not coming together, it's probably the leadership on the team.
Yeah.
Same thing with a mobile unit, with a group, like you just keep bringing it on up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, that is, and it takes people to, when somebody's on their soapbox because they brought it, for somebody else to be like, hey man, did you think about?
Right.
And that's actually good that he actually didn't just get defensive, because a lot of people just straight up get defensive, and be like, no man, you're an idiot, get out of here.
Yeah.
But no, that's good.
Yeah. And talking about that, man, again, I'm so thankful for the military experience, but I also I will say it's like, I came in at a weird time to where it was like, we weren't, I suppose, as far as like war and, and doing work and stuff like that, like we weren't as active as we'd been in the past, or not active at all, really. And I think like one thing that was kind of a shame is every once in a while you come across some other guys that, you wouldn't necessarily want to go downrange with. There's so many people that are phenomenal. And then every once in a while you have a couple, just a handful, maybe it's one or two, whatever. But then it's like, I don't know, it's like, damn, like this is the standard that we're upholding here. But because we're not going to a place where you can get shot or blown up or hurt somebody else. It's like, man, it's like, you should be kicked off the team, like, because you're a dirtbag, and it's just like, and nobody trusts you, it's like, and there's just every once in a while, that kind of stuff. So it was, for me, like I had some frustration because I was like, man, I wish that we could uphold this standard, no matter where we were going.
Right.
And I don't know if we were just, if we just didn't have enough, if it was a Manning thing or if it just, if because of the mission, it wasn't as serious, but I was like, I kind of developed early. I was like, man, I love this community, but I was like, I want to work in a place where, when you suck, you get fired, and I want to work in a place where when you are awesome and you're a rock star, you get promoted, or you get a raise, or you get more responsibility or stuff like that. And it's like, yeah. And obviously that happens, or, the more responsibility and, the LPO, the LCPO, like you will eventually, climb. But I just like, I don't know. I think like part of me was like, I don't know. I'm very thankful for my entire, my entire 8 years.
Yeah.
I think that was like the perfect amount of time, for me with, with what was going on. And, fortunately I'm not, broken.
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm also like thankful for that. Like,
yeah.
I'm glad I got all the training and all the, you know, the mindset stuff and the being held to a standard and just like the people. And it's like, wow, it's like, cool. It's like, yeah, my back was like, you know, whatever in my shoulder, but it's like, you know, I was like, I'm not broken.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
What actually led to you getting out? When did you start thinking about, okay, that's the path I'm going to take?
That's a great question. Yeah. Do you know, I think I kind of had I guess I had a couple like, maybe it was like a 3 phase. It was 3 phases or whatever. The first one was, I was like, man, I finally feel confident with the tools, with, you know, with how this EOD thing works. Like, I just want to go do stuff. And I was like, man, like, I just want to work. You know, I want to do the job in a place where there's a lot of work. And I was just like, I just wanted that so bad. And then finally I was like, you know what? It's just not, I came in at the wrong time. You know, I'm mad about it. I'm frustrated, you know, this and that. And since then I'm like, okay, like, you know, part of me is like, you know what? It wasn't meant for me. And I'm thankful, you know, like, I don't know that, you know, I didn't have, you know, the same experiences of watching, you know, like, you know, friends or family, you know, but like brothers, like, you know, get hurt,
right.
Or worse and stuff. So it's like, man, it's like, I was like, what an asshole for like wishing that I was like part of that, you know? So anyway, yeah. So that was kind of my first phase. I was like, man, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get that. You know, it is what it is, you know, but I love the military. I was like, I'm going to do 20 years, you know, like this shit is awesome. So I actually thought about like my second phase was like, well, you know what, since, you know, EOD's not, you know, popping off like I thought it was, like, maybe I'll do my 3 teams. And then I actually applied to Stay 21. Okay. And for EOD, there's only 1 slot. I think it was like one or 2 slots, but I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to switch it up. And I was like, I know all this stuff now. I was like, I'm going to go try to be a pilot. Like, just try that. I was like, you know, I go to school, it's like get my degree and then come back and like, then they had me for another 8 years or whatever. Maybe it was like 10 years. I'm so glad that didn't work out. You know, I'm so glad it was like, I forget who our XO was at the time. And, man, it was so funny. I guess a quick little story. I totally forgot about this, but I was going through the Stay 21, like interview process, and like, I forget what it was. I think it was it was like an aviation test. It was like the ASTB or something. It was like a 1 to 9 like grading scale or whatever. And it was like, I took it at, like I studied for it, took it at the, over at the Norfolk Naval Base or like right outside. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I forget what the test was, but it was like a multiple choice. And then like the last half was like, you actually had like controls for like an aircraft. And I mean, I did a little bit of gaming in my life. You know? So,
no big deal.
I killed this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I scored like, it's kind of weird how it like scored, but I scored like 8s or whatever. It was like 888 or 887 or something like that. And the dude, like, when he printed out my shit, he looked at it and he like looked at me and he's like, I've been doing this for 3 years. And he's like, this is the highest score I've ever seen. Yeah. And I was like, what? I mean, it's like kind of funny because it's like, I'm sure 20 other EOD guys would have walked in there and beat my score, you know, but it's like, but that was like the standard anyway. So yeah, it was like, so I had like a really good package and I had some like, you know, JSOQs and JSOYs and like, you know, had done well, like the EOD community liked me, you know, I was like, or I did well on, you know, on paper, you know, so I had like a really good package, like put together. And like, as I was going through the interview process, our XO was like, hey, like, you know, just so you know, like people don't get picked up on the first time. He's like, you got a really good package, but he's like, I just want you to know, like, people don't get picked up on the first time. And I was like, yeah, whatever, you know. And I actually did my interview over at, I think I did it over at 12. Are 2 and 12 in the same building now?
Yep.
So, yeah, okay. And I think I did it over with their skipper and like maybe their ops, and it was like some of those guys because it had to be like an external like board. And then there was a jet pilot that showed up. And dude, he was super chill and stuff. He was like, the EOD guys were kind of giving me a little bit of hard time. And I was like, hey, you know, it's just time for me to, you know, try. And like by the end of it, this skipper was giving me this, like, I don't even remember what he was saying. He was basically like, yeah, I don't know, man, you know, you did good, but leaving the community or something like that. And then the pilot's just like, hey man, can't wait to see you in the sky. You know, I was like, damn. You know? But anyway, you know, so, you know, it was like a funny experience, but, you know, I didn't get picked up and I'm so glad. Because that would have been the next 10 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I'm kind of on the fence. But then that last deployment, my LPO deployment, was coming up on the carrier. And I was like, you know what? I'm good to, you know, I think it was going to be like an after the fact thing anyway, like if I got picked up. And I was like, cool. I was like, let's go get this. And then COVID happened. And then I was stuck on the boat for 7 months. So like and it was like, I was like going through, like, I was basically like getting divorced during that time. And like, and then the COVID, like, and then COVID, and then the COVID boat. So then it was like, by the time I got back, I was
one
like,
after another.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I was like, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
So, and, yeah, I'd say tied for best decisions I ever made, joining the Navy and somehow, making it to the community, like, single greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I think, we'll call it number 2, like, best thing was like then transitioning out, to a world where it's like, you can bring the same mindset and the same standard, but then like, there's no ceiling.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can be phenomenal and you can create some amazing things, or you can make some really good money, or you can, kind of like touch on, like, real estate's like kind of been my thing.
Yeah.
For, I don't know, last 8 or 10 years, but now it's like, now I'm just like doing it.
Yeah.
Like basically full time,
Nice.
So, yeah, I don't even remember what your original question was, but.
Yeah. Just what led you to that process. So.
Yeah. Oh, so it was just, that was kind of the transition. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Looking at the transition side, how was that for you?
I'm so glad you asked. So it's actually, something we kind of talked about before. It's like something I definitely like wanted to talk about because I don't think a lot of people, this is my experience, are not talking about it.
Yeah.
And even more people are not educated on it. And it was something like, as soon as I got out, I was like, man, I need to figure this out. So we'll kind of, so I'll say this. Many people have commented that my transition was easier than a lot of other people, both from the community and I think a lot of people that, outside of the community. But it was good for me. I think I had a lot of lessons. People, you always got the I don't know, the crusty old master chief or senior chief. He's like, oh, you're giving up, huh?
Yeah. All right.
Giving up on the community, huh? And it's like, no, man, like, but anyway, it's like, oh, good luck finding a job out there, or good luck, healthcare, can you even afford healthcare? And it's just like, if you knew what healthcare was 25 years ago, it was like, what the market was then. I was like, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Or at least the research that I've done, I'm sure people have, other situations, but I'll tell you what, I learned a lot. The first thing is like, actually, here's my first plug. If you are getting out or thinking about getting out, you need to go to TAPS.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this you need to go to TAPS at 9 to 12 months from before separating. And listen, TAPS is not, it is not everything that you need, and it's not phenomenal, but it introduces you to a couple things. Like the first thing is, I don't know if you guys know, but when you get out and you submit a resume somewhere, I think the percentage is like kind of crazy, but maybe it might be like 80 or 90% of companies like use software to screen your resume.
Right.
So it's like a lot of people don't know this. And there were guys that I worked with over at the airport there. And I'll talk about that in a second, but like that had been out for, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And they just like, and they weren't even like spun up on it. But anyway, yeah. So it's like, anyway, the first thing is like, yeah, a lot of companies have this software that screens for the keywords, and that's something they talk about in TAPS, but it's like, so that's like kind of that should be your introduction so you understand how it works. But like I applied to this job up in Northern Virginia. It was basically like, it was like a junior EOD position. It was basically like, hey, if you can spell EOD and you went to EOD school, it was like, come be like an assistant team member or whatever. It was like, it was like a junior position. It was like, It's like I just got done with 8 years and a team leader and an OPO. And it was like, hey, if you can be a team member, you don't even, it was just like, it was a very basic role. And I was like, dude, I'll throw something out there. And I put together a resume, and I actually had put together like an Amazon, like a manager resume before that. So I used that resume to apply for this like junior EOD job.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So long story short, they were like, nah, dude, like, it was like, it didn't even make it to,
really?
it didn't even make it to the, the hiring manager or whatever. And they hit me back and they were like, hey, so, whatever, we decided you're not a good candidate. And I was like, how am I not a good candidate when like I have 8 years, they're looking for 6 months of experience. It was, maybe it was a year of experience or something like that. So that was my first introduction. It was like that, this whole, like having the keywords or having like, and there's a bunch of like websites, like I know like Job Scans, like one of them, like if you put in the job posting and then you put in like your resume, like it'll say like, oh, this is a 20% match. And here are the keywords that you need to use.
Gotcha.
And that's like one, but that's like my first thing. It's like, it's like, I'll say there's a ton of jobs out there, you know, for I'll speak specifically for like EOD guys. But it's just like a lot of the jobs have like softwares that just, you know, that screen for the keywords. That's kind of like my first thing. I think the second thing too is a lot of people talk about, they're like, oh yeah, the only EOD jobs available are like, you know, deploying over to whatever country and cleaning stuff up or UXO stuff. And there's a ton of that. But then there's also like, I found if you type in EOD in like Northern Virginia or like the DMV, like it's like not that many stuff, not that, yeah, shit like doesn't pop up.
Yeah.
But if you put in IED or if you put in WMD, there's a ton of jobs. And you put CBurn, there's a ton of jobs, or counter WMD. It's like, we use like our terms, but it's like what companies up there are looking for. It's like, you know, counter IED, CBurn, like counter WMD, like those types of things. Like there are so many jobs, you know, and it's just like, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, like, I'm not sure if I should get out, you know, because there's 2 jobs available, you know, and they're looking for, you know, 25 years experience or something like that. But then you like use those other keywords, or defense, you know, analyst, or like analyst is like a big one, or program analyst. Like I've seen dozens of jobs that like were titled like something program analyst or threat analyst or something. And like some of them are the IT stuff, but then there's a lot of like, you read the description and they're looking for somebody with like our exact training. Yeah. You know, and it's just like, why did you just change the title? Yeah. But anyway, so all that to say, like, yeah, it's like there are a lot of jobs. It's just like different words and like, you know, the screening software and stuff. It's like, but that's, I don't know, they kind of like talk about that shit in tabs. Yeah. So like, yeah.
You know, actually on that, one thing I want to plug out there, right? We are in the INSOF space, but actually INSOF, if you're looking to get out, reach out to them, because they have people and they can put you in touch with people that can do exactly what you're talking about. That can help look at your resume, look at jobs that you're trying to go for, and actually have some of that information too, to like, hey, you need to throw these buzzwords in there because that's what they're looking for and whatnot. And yeah, it's interesting how you can be. So I was looking to get out in 2015-ish, I think, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. Yeah, whatever. Sorry. Yeah. Trying to do math. It's hard. So I was looking to get out, wasn't, you know, kind of trying to see. There was a GS position that was open. Talked to some people. They were like, yep, we want you in this position. A guy that I worked with that was, you know, retired. He actually looked at my resume and was like, you're a moron. This is terrible. I don't even know why I talked to you. And then rewrote it for me. And then put it out. And it turns out that because of when I was going to get out and the job, from what they put in it was like a month or 2 before I was going to get out. Yeah. Immediately software flagged it, threw it out. Right. Yeah. And I didn't know that for a while. The guy that was over at the unit that, I was trying to get that job in, I guess he was gone or something like that. Anyways, I kept telling myself, you know, I'm feeling all right. Like, I feel like I could actually keep going. I'm not as disparaged as I was. You know, maybe I will stay in. Maybe if I don't get a response by this time, then that's my sign. I didn't get a response. I re-enlisted. I kid you not. It was like 2 days after I re-enlisted. They were like, hey, this dude's calling. He said he just found out that yours got flagged. They're changing their stuff. Said, you know, hey, call him and they'll change it and then you can reapply and it'll work. And I was like, well, it's kind of too late now. Yeah. But yeah, that was my first experience to it. I had no idea that, like, you know, I knew there was something in there, but literally it's crazy how many people or how many resumes that are fully actually qualified can get thrown out as, you know, just worthless trash because it didn't have the right acronym or word or whatever. Yeah. It's crazy.
And you know, what's actually crazy is, and I would suggest to anybody, like, obviously I'll throw out there, I love talking about, we're getting into the stuff that I love talking about. It's like the transition, like the potential in the outside world. Cause I kind of thought about this the other day before I hit that. I'm like, Now I'll come back to that. Anyway, so so the software, it's another thing with federal positions too, or like GS positions. It's like software that screens, random companies or whatever, like they've got software that screens, but then like the federal positions, like to apply, like your resume has to look different.
Yeah.
And it's a different format, and it's like slightly like there's just different rules.
Right.
And it's just like, and when you go through, like there's a bunch of stuff to go over, and I learned a lot about it. And I talked to a bunch of people that had federal positions, and after, dozens of times of applying, and it was just like, I applied to a couple positions, and I just like, instead of putting, September 2013, I put September 13. And like, because the date format was wrong, it immediately cut it out. Or I applied to another one. It was because I put my DD-214, and it was like, I guess there's like two versions of it. It's like, they're the exact same, except one of them has at the bottom, like the last line on the first page, it's like honorable discharge. And then the other form, whatever I got sent, like when I got out, I thought that was it. Just doesn't have that. It has everything else, but it doesn't have honorable discharge.
Yeah.
So it's like, so when I applied, they're like, hey, we actually denied. Feel free to call if you have any questions. We can't verify that you were a veteran. It was like, because it was like a veteran only position or something.
Okay.
It was like, and I called the number. The numbers, the customer service numbers are phenomenal. They pick up every time. Like shout out to them. But I was like, hey, like what's up? And they're like, oh yeah, like I'm pulling up your stuff right now, and we couldn't verify your, your veteran status because you put the wrong DD-214. So it had everything but that one line, and the lady knew exactly what it was, and she's like, yep. So we kicked it out, and I'm like, is that something you could have, like reached out? And I was like, it was literally the document.
Yeah.
It just didn't say honorable at the bottom. It was like, it wasn't there. And she's like, oh yeah, you got to request that. And she's like, nah, it's like, we don't do that if it doesn't meet the criteria, period. Yeah. And so like the federal system's like kind of funny with like that, or the hiring system. It's like, it's a certain format. It's like when they say like, hey, this, and this needs to be done, it 100%. That's how it has to be. Or it's like an immediate, like you could be super qualified, and it's just like, it just won't count. So I think like anybody that's interested in that kind of stuff, like there's a ton of jobs, and there's a ton of jobs that, I don't know, have something to do with like our experience, and then even like, just like the EOD side of it, not even, the leadership portion of it, or the, or the managing or supervising people. But I would like if somebody, like I would tell anybody, like reach out to me, like I'll pass everything that I have or anything that I have. And then like, reach out to like somebody else that's already like in, that's been hired in a federal position. Cause then, it's like, they'll go through too, and it's like, hey, like, grade yourself like 1 to 5. How good are you at like these like 10 things? And if you don't put 5s on every single one, you'll never get the job. Yeah. It's like, if I knew two prior Army techs, and they applied to like TSSE positions at some of the airports and stuff, and they were putting like 4s. They were being honest. Like, oh, like I'm really good, but it's like, oh, a 5 is like you could teach this at a, at a master's degree level, or you're a graduate program level, or to a, to 150 students and never stutter once or something like that. I was like, so the lady was like, no, no, like I cannot do that. I'm a 4. Like I can do it very well. But then like the first time, then she put 5s. Then it was like, hey, you want a job?
That's crazy.
Like, so like stuff like that. Yeah. But like, but yeah, I think dude, I'll tell you what, going back to how my transition has been, I love it. Cause it's like, you take that, the EOD standard, and it's just like, you can show up and be 80% and you're just better than, it's not everywhere, obviously, but you're just like, it's just like better than, some of the other guys you work with and stuff. And it's just like, so that's, that's kind of cool. And then you get rewarded for, doing a good job, and it's,
yeah,
that's kind of sick.
Just having that mindset of like putting your head down and working until the job's done.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing that, when you look at all the memes and the reality, that's the thing that people complain about these days is like, in general, and this is a very general statement, it seems like there's a lot more people that are not willing to push through any adversity. No. And so when you come from this, where like literally every day some adversity of some form happens, you kind of become numb to the adversity side effect, and you're like, oh, that's expected. All right, how do I solve this problem? Yeah,
it's actually kind of crazy too. It's like, because some of the guys, like some of the people that I've worked with, not military, just like the Gen Pop, it's almost like they're just getting they're very much getting softer. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a new thing, but it's like, so it's, again, something I'm thankful for. It's like, I'm glad that I had that, like, I don't know, that experience in the community. Cause it's like, man, it's like sometimes you have to go a little longer and sometimes you have to be hard. And sometimes it's like this, and it's just like, you're like, hey, if it needs done, you're gonna be here all night. And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But then it's like, you take half of that out into the civilian world and it's just like, I don't know, you can be very successful, outside in the civilian world.
Yeah.
So outside that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So after you transitioned and you said you did some contracting stuff initially, did you do that because you weren't sure exactly what you wanted to do, or did you do that because that's what you wanted to do initially?
It was kind of like this. It was like I wanted to get out of the area. It was like hey, like let's move somewhere new. Let's try something new. And it was like, what can I leverage? Like, what have I been doing for the last 8 years that I can, not start at an entry level position? I threw out some some Amazon like manager, a job or something, just to like go through the process of applying for a job. So I was like, I don't really want this, but like, let me just see how I can put everything together. And obviously it's like, it was very ugly. It's just like a suck at writing resumes. It was like suck about like saying, I was like, oh, like, tell me how awesome you are. And it's like, well, like all I can think about is like 30 other people like looking at me as I'm like filling this out. I'm like, I'm not very awesome at all, But yeah, no. So I was like, man, let me check out. People were saying like, oh, Northern Virginia, DC and stuff. There's a bunch of jobs up there. So I just I looked and there was a bunch of jobs, and I actually found a ton of jobs, and one of them was it was what I'm doing now. It was the position's called something else. It was basically, it's a IED fabricator, or training IED fabricator for TSA. And I was like, dude, so you're saying I could just make training aids and that's the job.
And get paid for it.
Yeah. I was like, dude, I enjoy that part of, so I was like, and that's a little, it's a little change up. It's not like, being active, like, the workups and stuff, but it's just like, no, it's like, that's cool. So, interviewed. It's so funny. Here's a lesson. So in the job posting, the guy, I won't put him on blast because he's one of my current bosses, but he spelled ordnance wrong.
Yeah.
So people were applying to the job, I'm sure, as EOD techs, but because they spelled ordnance correct, none of them were making through.
Really?
Yeah. So I spelled ordnance correct, the way it's supposed to be spelled, every single time. And then the last line, it was like, or the last like 2 lines, I put ordnance, it was like ORDIN, and I spelled it wrong 2 times. And the next day I get this phone call and he's like, hey, hiring manager wants to talk to you. Like, you free tomorrow? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm free. And then like, we're talking for like 15 minutes. He's like, hey man, I think you'd be great. I was like, he didn't know anything about the job. And he's like, hey, you're prior EOD? And I was like, yep. And I was like, you have experience building, like training aids and stuff? Or they call them, it's funny that they say like, oh, building like training threats and stuff. And I'm like, yes, like training devices. Like, of course, like we do this all the time, for training and whatever. And he's like, all right, well, I'll send you over the offer and this and that. And I was like 15 minutes. It was like 15 minutes and like, you didn't even ask me anything. I was like, but hell yeah. And it was like, but it's been a great job. It's like, yeah. But yeah, that was a lesson of, like I had to throw in 2 of the wrong words, or misspelled words just so it would pop up. That's crazy. Yeah. What's crazy is there was another guy that actually applied. There were 2 contracts that do that job. So I was on one of them, or I'm on one of them. And one of the guys on the other, and I won't put him on blast or anything, but he spelled ordnance incorrectly for his entire resume. And I was like, did you do that on purpose? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, hold on. Do you know about the screening software? And he's like, no. I was like, check. Right. I was like, all right. He wasn't a Navy guy, but that's funny. That's all that matters. But yeah, no. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah. So there's a ton of jobs up there, and I was like, hey, let's get out of the area. I'm very passionate about real estate. Bought a couple properties over the years, and I'm going to continue to buy investment properties and stuff. I think here's, another plug. It's like, if you're in the military, I'll rewind. Yes, if you're in the military, but if you're a Navy EOD tech, I was like, you need to buy a house, especially if you're going to be in the area in Virginia Beach. This is me plugging. Everybody can, I had a conversation today. I was talking about it, Josh Barris and stuff. Yeah. But we're talking about real estate. He's an agent in the area. Like, if you're in the area, you should use him. Like the dude, like I'm tired of working with like people that like don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's like requirement number one. If you're a brand new Navy EOD tech, like you need to hit up Josh.
Yeah.
But you need to hit him up and you need to buy a house because you can buy something with 0% down and then rent out the rooms to your buddies, so you can see them. They can pay your mortgage. Like you can, like, I was like, everybody should use their VA loan. Like I have my VA loan. It's like funny how it works. But like, I basically have 3 properties paid for or financed through, just because I live there and then I went to the next place and then the limit went up in Northern Virginia. So I like bought a 3rd place. So it's like, I'm like really passionate about like having, like owning a home and paying it off and then having somebody else eventually pay it off and going. So anyway, so real estate up there is kind of like a shock. It's like you see a $350,000 house down here and you're like, dude, huge backyard. Like, like it's a ginormous house. Like it's got 4 bedrooms. Like, let's go. And then there's like a 1-bedroom up in Northern Virginia. It's like 500,000. You're like, this is a 1-bedroom. And then the agent goes, no, actually it's a studio. And you're like, what? But I'll tell you, since I've been up there for 2 years almost, I've grown to love it.
Yeah.
Because if you can get your way into a property, and I found this steal, like negotiated the shit out of it. It was a short sale, like phenomenal. But if you can get yourself into the property, like the appreciation up there is just like there's just so many people up there and they're just building so much. Like home values just like they just go up so fast.
Yeah.
And it's just like anyway. So I'll get back to the question. But yeah, so there's just I wanted to get out of the area. Ton of jobs up there. I was like, hey, we'll check out this area. I did the White House month-long gig a couple times.
Okay.
Loved being up there. I thought that was a great, great work to time off ratio and stuff. But so since I guess I'll finish my answer. But it's like a ton of opportunities up there. And then like as I've figured out this whole contracting gig, it's like, hey. It's like, how do you guys feel about me? I was like, I want to get my license. I was like, eventually I'm going to do this, my real estate license. I was like, I've already been doing this for, the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I was like, now I'm just going to like help a bunch of like buddies and stuff. And it's just like, wait, I've been a part of like 60 transactions in a couple different states, like helping people like work with lenders or helping people like buy investments or buy their own. I was like, I'm sending these people like until I'm glad Josh got his, his license and stuff, but like, I was like, I'm sending people to like other people that knew, I don't know, not as much as me, or like didn't have the same standard,
right?
And they were just like, they're used to, I don't know. Anyway, so a lot going on up there.
Yeah.
And then I have since to appreciate, I have learned to appreciate like the appreciation in the housing market. So it's like, man, it's like, I just want to keep buying up a couple of these. It's like, maybe they don't cash flow like day one,
right? But
like 5 years down the road, it's like when rents go up a little bit, then you can refinance and you got some loan paid out. It's like, now all of a sudden they cash flow, and I've got some other creative things going on with like up there. I could talk about that stuff all day. I love that stuff. But yeah. So I think I'm gonna be up there for a little bit. But
did you get into that at all, or were you thinking about that at all while you were in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you start?
Yeah. So I'll tell you. I usually when I talk about this, it's like, and this is the shit I care the most about. But so about 10 years ago, I guess is when I joined. I grew up in a small town in Western Pennsylvania, and people don't make a lot of money up there.
Yeah.
So from an early age, I realized I cannot be in this situation when I have a family or when I grow up.
Yeah.
So immediately I was like, okay, what are rich people doing? And it was just like, and then I'd, read or listen or watch all this stuff. And it was like, okay, rich people invest. And I'm like, okay, what is investing? And it was like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, like this and that. And then I was like, okay, I'd learned about it. And I was like, all right, there's some potential there. I see, how this works. And then it was like, and then real estate. And I was like, okay, how's this work? And then I was like, whoa. I was like, every wealthy person on the planet owns real estate.
Yep.
And I was like, and there's just so many ways to win with real estate, or it's just like, or to get ahead. It's just like, excuse me. It's like either with the, the taxes that you save or the You can add an extra bedroom, or you can fix a place up and add some value. You can refinance, you can do a cash out refinance, go buy another property. It's just like you can rent it. You can buy a place with 5% down or 0% down. Like, here's another plug. Like, if you're in the military, like, you should eventually, like, buy some houses and stuff. But yeah, and then you can rent out rooms to your buddies. Like, there's just so many ways, to win. And then when you have like enough properties and you're doing, certain jobs, or we could go into this all day, but it's like, then you can write off, you can use your losses from real estate.
Right.
And then, doing things like, cost segregation, or if you work in, as like a real estate professional and stuff, like, you can write off everything you make.
Yeah.
It's like kind of funny, kind of a quick thing. It's like, I heard this dude, Grant Cardone, he's a big real estate guy, big sales guy too. Been following him for a while, but like, he was talking about, he's like, I don't even own my own house. He's like, I rent my house. And I was like, what? And it's like, that doesn't make sense. He's like, one of my companies owns my house. And I rent it to myself.
Gotcha.
So he's like, so this mansion that's $20 million or whatever, he's like, I write all that shit off. And I was like, so anyway, I think it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of, there I go again, get into it. But like, anyway, so I realized investing real estate in like about 10 years ago, right before I joined. I started following this community called Bigger Pockets, and it's like phenomenal for real estate education. And they were like just getting started then. They're like huge now.
Yeah.
But they're just like anything and everything, like real estate. They've got a video on it. They've got like 800 episodes, and like,
nice.
for like podcasts and stuff. Like I just learned so much, through them and stuff. So
that's cool. Yeah. DC, I actually like that. I dislike the traffic in DC, but I love the terrain up in Northern Virginia and that area. Like, here is very flat and swampy.
Yeah.
Up there, you can actually like get a hill in every now and then. You know, there's some nice running water I actually enjoy it. Yeah. Up there on that side.
You ever you've run some marathons in your life, right? Mm-hmm. Did you ever run the Marine Corps?
In San Diego, not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ask because talk about the trade and stuff. Kind of something I had going on, I don't know, a year after I got out. This was like 6 months. I was like, dude, this is different. But I was like, I don't have anything to like the challenges in my life or the goals or like the things that I'm putting there. I was like, there's nobody around me to like motivate me or like push me or they're doing something. I was like, I need to surround myself. I was like, I need to do something. So I was out doing a run one night, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to sign up for a marathon. And I was like, I think it'd be sick because of the military, like association, like the Marine Corps marathon. I was like, dude, this is a sick marathon. I was like, I'm in this area. I was like, I don't have any like, it's like the longest I ever ran, I think was like a 6 mile like run in like dive school or something. Yeah. I was like, I know that there's the 10 miler, they did like the IED 10 miler. And like, I think it was because me and one of the dudes like rolled. I had a killer Rockets and Projos story. but I think because we rolled out, like our class ahead of us like did the IED 10 miler. Okay. And then by the time we got in, they're like, oh yeah, you'll get the next one. And then we just like, it never happened.
Never did.
Yeah. So it's like, anyway, so the longest I ran was like 6 miles. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I'm not gonna be one of those dudes that runs a marathon. I was like, there's no point. Yeah. But then I was out running one night, and I was like, dude, I need something to like challenge me. I was like, it's like one thing if you're like, hey, you got to like train because we're deploying, or we're trained because like, you need to be able to like drag your buddy or carry your buddy or like this or that. Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to sign up for a marathon. And
nice.
And it was pretty cool. It was fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fine. Yeah. It was whatever. Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and like talk about how sick running is.
How long do you train for it?
Seriously trained for it? Probably 100 days.
Nice.
Yeah. Probably 90 to 100 days.
How much did it hurt?
You know what I'll tell you, and I'm sure you love talking about the running stuff because you're a runner. But you know what I'll say is there's a really cool trail to run in like Alexandria. I think is it the Mount Vernon Trail? Yeah, it's like a really good run. It's like going through like the woods and stuff. And I would just take like Saturdays. I would do long runs in the morning, and then every week I just push it a little bit further. And one day I was like. One day I just had to run. Like I was like, you know what? Like I can't get over this. Like I don't know, like 7 mile or whatever. It was like some of them is like 7 or 8 miles. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do a 12 miler. Yeah. And I just need to do it. And then I did. And I was like, well, that's not that bad. I'll circle back. So I would just slowly do longer runs, and then the longest run I did was a 20 miler.
Okay.
Like maybe was it 2 weeks before or something.
Yeah.
But my cardio was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was like, and I was playing in some basketball leagues, and dude, we would run, and I remember like all these dudes in their 30s, and they're just like, they're fucking gassed.
Yeah.
It was like we're like 10 minutes in the first half, and we're just sprinting the entire time, and some dude's shooting this free throw, and I'm like, damn, like I'm just like looking. I was like, I shouldn't have done that or whatever. I was like talking to myself, and all I hear is, and just everyone around me is just gassed. We might have been 8 minutes in the first half. And I like looked at myself and I was like, I feel incredible. And I'll tell you, I played the entire game, like both halves. And I like at the end, some dude's like, hey, how you feeling? Are you tired now? And I was like, I could play another game. So I will say like, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, so my cardio was great. And then when I got to mile 20, I don't think, and maybe you'd know a lot more about this, but like, I don't think I did enough like hip glute, like strengthening stuff. So like, I just hurt.
Yeah.
Like, my shit like really hurt. So I'll say, and I'd love to hear what you have. But, like for the first, like my thing was like, hey, I'm going to run 20 miles straight. And I was like, and then, you know, if I start to walk or whatever, like that's fine.
Yeah.
I was like, as long as I get the first 20, like I'll finish, you know, we'll figure out the last 6, you know? So, but yeah. So.
Yeah, it gets painful. I mean, it just for anybody, you know, and a lot of the running programs they have you run like 20 or 22 miles usually at the max. And it's good. And it's actually more important because if you look at the running program, most of them have you run it at a pace at which you'll actually be running for longer time than when you run the 26 miles at the pace you want to try and actually run it at.
Interesting.
So there's a thing where the time you spend running is more important than the pace you spend running, and it's because of the one you're training your body to be able to take that beating for that amount of time,
Gotcha.
right? And then it's also a mental thing, right? Because what do you look at? Like you look at a couple things, but most of us look at our watch, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we see that 20-mile thing and we're like, oh my God, it's, you know, it's been a long time since I've ran that far. So the hours are off, but at 20 miles, you know, you look like, oh, it's 3 hours. Like, oh, this is terrible. But I remember that 4-hour run I did and I'm running at 10-minute pace. Okay. I know I can push it out for another hour because that's basically how long it'll take me, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But which is better than, you know, if you're just running mileage and you ran your 22 miles faster than you are running your marathon pace.
Yeah.
And you look and you're like, you know, I'm at mile 20 and you're like, oh my God, it's 4.5 hours. And you're already mentally, you're just done. And then it's crazy how fast, you know, like getting that challenge. I think that's important. I go through that all the time where my wife just told me my next challenge I'm not going to be able to do. But
what's the next challenge? Might as well put it on the pod. So
I hate to say this, but I think she's actually right. But I am going to put together over the next couple of years. I need some people that are good at running and are willing to do miles, lots of them in a bomb suit. And I will tell you the rest after because I don't want to put it all out there.
That's
so
right.
I got a lot of logistics to plan, but I want to try and do this basically like fundraiser with it. And what I will probably do is try to do as much as I can, but she didn't even there was no thought in her mind of like, I'll let him pretend. It's kind of rude, but the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, she's probably kind of right. At some point, there's a limitation we have, but I am actually getting back into running now after a while of not doing it for a while, but it always hurts a little more.
I was gonna say you've always enjoyed running though, right?
I do, and that's the worst part about getting broken is that's actually for me. you know, I know like when Scott was on, he talks about lifting is where like, you know, he like works through things a lot of times, you know, like
that dude's an animal.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is.
Let him down.
Love him. But my thing was running, and I've actually noticed that, and I think everybody should have some type of physical thing, whatever it is. Some people swimming, you know, maybe even a row, or I don't know, that's weird. But rowing was always the hardest thing for me to do, but mentally. But because I think like back when I ran a lot, if I was pissed off with somebody at work, I didn't have to have that conversation with them. I could just go out and run, and I would have that conversation during the run. And of course I would always win that conversation. So the run, there were times where I remember, especially when I was a new guy, you know, and you just have to take it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, I hate my chief. And I'd go out and I'd have those whatever, and my run would last as long as it needed to win that conversation. And I'd come back, and, you know, physically I'd be exhausted. Mentally, I would have like washed that problem off of me.
Yeah.
And now I'm like reset. That's what I use that a lot for.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I'll say is it started off as like, I just need something. But as I spent time like doing those long runs on Saturday morning, it's like so sick to even say, but like, I was like, just like being outside. I mean, not this being outside part, but just like running for like, I remember the first time I ran for like 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and then I don't know, it's just like, it was going out there and like listening to podcasts or something, or like, or like I was listening to some real estate stuff, or listening to some, you know, some business stuff or whatever. And there was something about it. It was like, it was just cool. You know, it was like, I guess in the second half of the, you know, because the Marine Corps is in, I think in like October. So it was like cool enough during that, like, you know, the months before, like in the morning. And I was just like, man, I was like, this is actually like really relaxing.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was something like, I don't know. I was like, man, I was like, I don't want to, you know, I'm not ready to take over like the running, like, or to do the running full time for that to be my thing.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe that's later in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I was like, there was something about it. I was like, it's definitely relaxing. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
You get into a groove. It's like you get into that groove, and you're just it's cool because one of the probably best things that I liked about it is I'm not a very outgoing person, so I could like be out with people without having to actually be with people. You know, I'd be running by and like I'm like, okay, I'm out here, you know, or you go out in nature, and that's another thing is like I really liked running trails.
Yeah.
And you know, if I walk, I'm not going to walk 15 miles.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do it, you know, like unless I'm going to a place to go camping, but I'm not going to do that. One, that would take forever.
Yeah.
But when you go out and do a long run, going out for 15 miles on a single track trail, or even if it's a little bigger, just being out there, and like you get to see so much stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I know everybody out there is like, what about a bike? You could use a bike, you losers. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll tell you what, that was the sickest part. It was like, where I would run on the Mount Vernon Trail, it was like, I think from like the starting point down to like the bottom, it was like 7.5 miles. So it was like anytime, like when I did my 15 miler, it was like perfect. Or if I did like the 18, it was like, okay, we'll go up a little bit, then we'll come back down, and then I have to get home.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's, you know, but I'll tell you what was sick is like, after you would run like 1.5 miles or 2 miles down, it was like the people you saw down there, and it's disgusting because you'd see the same people all the time, you know, it'd be like, it's like, I've been waving at you like every day now, you know. I'll say there's 3 things that's sick. It's like, first, it's like, it was like, all right, so like we're 2 miles out. It's like, anybody I see down here, I was like, they're training for something. You know, they're real runners. It's me and the real runners out here. You know? And then, you'd see the same people all the time, and then you get like more friendly, or, you know, the runner wave or whatever. It's like, damn, like, you know, this is cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, and you know what? It was like, as I was doing, like, I would do the longer runs on the weekend, and then I would do, you know, something during the week. And I was getting to the point, I was like, you know what? Like, I remember having this conversation with myself. I was like, I'm going to go, you know, it was like was it a Tuesday, Thursday, or maybe, it was a Tuesday, Thursday, then I would run, or Monday, Wednesday, I would make it work. But I would go out and then run like, I don't know, 6 or 8 miles or something like that. Or I'd do 6 or 7 miles. And I remember the first 2 times I was like, oh, I'll do 6 miles. Came back, and then it was like a Wednesday. And I was like, oh yeah, I was like, my buddy was like, hey, like, what are you running tonight? I'm like, so dumb for even asking me, like, why are we talking about running? But it's like, then I was like, I'm going to do just a 6 miler.
Yeah.
And then I paused and I was like,
I
was like, I have no problem. Like a 6 miler is now easy.
Yeah.
And it's like nothing. And I'm just like, who am I?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. It was just weird to like, but I'll tell you, it was just like, it was very fun. It was like very relaxing. And it was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think, we're just better than everybody else. So.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself I was happy. It was like, longest run was a 6 miler in like, dive school.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I did a 5K like before I joined, the Navy, but then it was like, I think that's such like I don't know. I wouldn't have any buddies that were not like military, affiliated to like go say like, oh, hey, furthest I ever ran was 3 miles.
Yeah.
I'm going to go run 26.
Yeah,
but for me, it was like, no, that's possible. Like,
Yep.
Of course it is. I was like, and you see some people out there when I was running the marathon, you saw some people out there that I was like, you're not an athlete.
Right.
It's like, and there's a lot of people, and then you like talk to them or whatever, and they're like, hey, first marathon or whatever. And they're like, no, like 12th or 13th.
Yeah.
And you're like, I was like, damn,
Yeah.
Like, so a good experience.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
It's cool to just, be around people that, or all have a goal. I think that's one of the cool things about doing the marathon. I've done 2 official marathons, and then I've ran, I don't know. I've done
say an unofficial marathon because I'm about to puke.
Well, yeah, I did this stupid thing in Guam where I ran 32 miles.
Oh yeah.
And then I like when I was training in after high school and then in college, my thing was a 5K, but I was a high mileage runner. So there's like different kinds of retards. I was the high mileage kind. And so my long runs were anywhere from 12 to 22 miles. So on Sundays I'd go out and do that. Usually it was my coach didn't want me to run 20 or 22, but I enjoyed it. Told you, different kind of retard. Yeah. So I would do that fairly consistently. And actually the most disappointing is I never ran a marathon until I joined the military, actually. And I was like, why didn't I? I always told myself that I was never going to run a marathon, even though I would run like 22 miles. And I wish I would have, because my marathon time would have been so much faster back then than, if I would have just ran 4 extra miles at any one of those days, I would have beat my time. That like, oh well.
What do you think the fastest you ever ran I don't know, 20 or 22 miles?
I want to say just over 2 hours.
Damn.
I'd have to look at it to like verify for sure. I'd have to look at the pace, but I very much remember. I guarantee I've ran 18 in 2 hours, like right at 2 hours flat.
Damn.
And I think 22 was probably somewhere around 2.5 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to throw this in. I remember, so I always played basketball like growing up. So cardio was like, I don't know. I think like joining, I was always, I don't know, pretty good at cardio things, or like the swimming and the running I was always pretty good at. And I remember like being like, okay, if I can hold a 6-minute mile pace for the 1.5 miles and I'll kick it at the end, it's like I got to a point where I was like, I could do that. So I'm like sub, like now, like, some of the PSTs I took like coming in and stuff was like sub, I guess like 9 minutes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, I am really happy with that.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about like running like, 20 miles, or I had a buddy, he ran in like college. And I guess when you guys talk about like holding 6-minute mile paces for extended period of time, like I'm just like, that's just crazy.
There's a piece that most people don't think of, right? Like, because when I say that, you look at me and you're like, okay, he was probably a little skinnier, and you're right, I was a little skinnier. But I wasn't just a little skinnier, right? I was also like, there are a few people. I remember in EOD school, because I was running a lot in EOD school. There was this jacked dude. I don't know what he did, but he did things. And he was out at like every 5K, every 10K. And he was quick too, because I remember the first time, of course, everybody has prejudice. Like everybody does. I looked at him and I was like, Yeah. Count him out. And he was up there. Like he didn't win any of them, but he was not slow by any means.
Yeah.
I guarantee he was either right at 20 or just under 20 for a 5K. Fast for a jacked dude. Guessing probably like 210, 5'9" like me, but like solid muscle. I was not that.
Yeah.
And like when I was running, I came into the military, I was 145 pounds. I remember this girl that I'd broken up with, she told me she would get back together with me once I weighed over 145. Or sorry, 140. It never happened. But
jeez.
Yeah, like I mean, there's things with it, right? Like if you asked me to pick up a log greater than a foot long, I couldn't do it, but I could run 22 miles at a pretty quick pace.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't carrying much weight, you know?
Yeah.
So there's gives and takes, right? And then there's those freaks like Maddie who can run a sub 6 mile and deadlift 600 pounds and squat 600 pounds all within 24 hours with like a little bit of training, deciding he's going to do it. And then very short time later do that. Like, that's not me.
I remember you telling me about that. And I saw he posted a video like not too long ago or whatever. He was deadlifting. Somebody else it showed up on my feed or whatever. And I was like, dude, I was like, man, he is strong as shit. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some, I think it all comes down to like what I like looking at it. And a lot of the things that I did, like for me, even when I was a runner, those Sunday runs, I didn't have to run that long, but I liked it because like I loved suffering even before I came in. And then
it's a runner thing, right?
It is. It really is. Yeah. Because you can't do it without suffering. You can't, well, it's not true. You can do it without suffering, but one, you're probably not going to go very far. And two, you're definitely not going to be very fast.
Yeah.
And then I came in and that's, just like you said at the beginning, right? Like sometimes I hated, but I loved to hate the beatings. Like at the end of the day, there was like that sense of pride that like they couldn't break me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved that. And I still love that. Although I'm much worse now.
Yeah. Except it hurts more.
Yeah, it does.
It really hurts now.
Yeah. It hurts a little more when I'm doing it, and it hurts for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah. The old guy syndrome. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, there's something about that like I always loved the mental toughness side of it, like just doing stuff that sucks and doing it for longer than I want to, because then I know the next time, like, okay, I did that. I know I can do that. Yeah. Like, yeah, there's something about that.
Yeah. I want to give a shout. I actually remember from my second carrier ride, there was a dude on our team, Danny, and he used to love punishing himself.
Yeah.
I remember he had this challenge. He's like telling us one time he was going to go up to one of our other spaces and do. So like, I guess it wasn't like 500 burpees, but it was like, it wasn't necessarily like a 500, like 8 count. I for whatever like is in the middle. I can't remember. It's like, or maybe we'll just call it like a strict burpee. It's like, you go down, push up, and there's no like, falling on the ground. It's like I guess methodically or intentionally, like down to the push-up position, then you press. And I was like, anyway, when you're talking about like, like loving the suffer and like, and he would just like, dude, he was in phenomenal shape. Dude was just, chiseled, and he was just like, he would just love like doing those like all the time. And it's just like, oh, like, I mean, if that's what you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's definitely a healthy, like, hey, let's pay the man every once in a while, just to remember. But he's like, it's just, he wanted to pay a lot, so that's good for him. But
everybody's got their thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I think I want to throw something in.
Yeah.
Talking about the broken. So I kind of like brought it up before. Something I've gotten like real passionate about, like after transitioning and stuff. Mm-hmm. Another thing with like the taps, just introducing you to a couple things. when I was in TAPS, they were like, hey, they brought up the disability stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's some, I think there was a mentality. It's very common, I think, in the EOD community and certain other communities. It's like, hey, man, if you weren't blown up, if you weren't shot, if you didn't lose a limb, you're not disabled. Shut the fuck up, kind of thing. Or at least, or that's just my internal, or my internal voice and stuff. But when I was going through TAPS and stuff, it was like, hey, like here's some a VSO or the number that somebody that can kind of help you put something together. Like, hey, everybody should go. Especially I went with two other EOD guys. The lady's like, oh yeah, like you guys were EOD or whatever. Like you guys should definitely go. And I was like, I don't have anything, so I'm not going to go. But anyways, I'm glad that, I made an appointment. She's like, oh no, you guys should just like go talk to somebody, like have them educate you a little bit on the process. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad I went, because that started my like the shift, for me. But I went and dude looked at my medical records and I was like, I don't have anything, right? And he's like, oh, well, is your back still fucked up? And I was like, well, yeah, because I fucked up my back when I was in Africa. And then I every 9 months or 6 or 9 months later, I would just get these spasms. I'd have to lay on the floor and be like, oh my God, and I've since learned, some ways to kind of treat that or get some other parts of my body, stronger. But anyway, he was like, hey man, your back and shoulder stuff, you may not think it's a big deal now, but he's like, hey, we need to submit this, so it's there. And I was like, you know what? He's just like, listen, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't want to be that guy, that it's like, oh, he's putting in for disability and stuff. And he's like, no, listen, man. He's like, you signed up to do this. And he's like, your body, he's like, look at other, 28-year-olds.
Right.
Like, your body did not age at the same rate as them. And I'm just like, I was like, well, I hear you. And he's like, listen, he's like, I'm telling you as a retired Army dude or whatever. He's like, you need to just put this stuff in. He's like, if you don't want to put anything else in, he's like, man, I don't care. But he's like, you need to put the shit in, And I was like, you know what, fine. And I think since then I think I'm really glad that he did that for me, and my back is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. My shoulder's hurts all the time and stuff. But I just I think there's a lot of people that have, a lot more things wrong with them. And I guess I'll just kind of open this up to say I've talked to a bunch of guys that got out, 10 and 15 years ago. And they're like, oh, when I put in my claim, VA said, fuck you. And they gave me 20%. So you know what? That's all I'm getting. And I want to throw out there, the VA is it's very different now. And it's very friendly and it's very inviting and it's very forgiving. And it's just I think over the last couple of years, I've helped a bunch of buddies figure out the process and learn the difference between, the new claim and filing for an increase. And I know a little bit about the appeal stuff, but there's a dude on YouTube. There's a bunch of dudes on YouTube, but one dude, his name is Combat Craig. And one of the guys I work with, he follows him religiously. But anyway, it's it's the things that you don't know that are connected. Yeah. Yep. He was talking about, hey, he's like, you might have tinnitus and, and you might have this ringing, or you might have something with your ears, but then but you also get headaches and stuff. He's like, and he was walking through it with somebody. He's like, you also get headaches? And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, you get migraines and stuff? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, well, in the VA's book, that's one of those secondary effects. He's like, it's something, I think it's another thing going back to I don't know how we go about things or our humble problem or whatever, but it's almost stuff that you don't look for a problem or you don't think about it. But when you look at that web in the VA, it's oh no, your hearing, or your tinnitus could lead or very much does contribute and you don't even know it to your migraines or tying it to PTSD or your your back stuff actually leads to your shoulder stuff. Mm-hmm. And you have no idea,
right.
Or your neck stuff or your arm. And it's just there's so many of those. So I guess I want to put out there, I think anybody that says I shouldn't get, I shouldn't get looked at or I shouldn't put anything in. There's a lot of guys that just a lot of guys in the community, and you're talking about how you just hurt. And it's just things especially the knee, just everything. If you hurt right now, everybody needs to put in, or everybody needs to put in a claim, but more importantly, you need to go to somebody to talk to, and there's a bunch of these companies too that will put together your packages and stuff. But right out of the gate, it was just my shoulder and back stuff. And they're like, hey, we'll submit this. And I was like, whatever. And then they came back and it was oh, here's 60%. And I was like, 60% for my back and shoulder? And I was like, I know guys that were in excuse me, 10 and 15 years before me that are so fucked up in just their entire body and they're just like the mental health stuff and it's just like real stuff and they're walking around with like 20%,
right?
Or 30%. Right? I had a buddy and he's like, oh yeah, I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so I think like some of those guys or from like that generation, I guess that's how I'll put it. But excuse me, like I think the VA was a very different place, and I think there was a different, mentality with it, or kind of like. Yeah. So anyway, like I think everybody should go to TAPS and just like have somebody else tell you,
right?
Like, hey man, disability, like address it or talk to somebody, And it's just like really easy to like, it's like the stuff that you're like not capturing. Like everybody, I don't know. Some people kind of make it sound like kind of like sneaky or whatever. It's like, oh, like when you're getting out, like that's when you need to go, like go get that on record or go get this. But it's like no, like seriously, like especially guys that have like families and stuff. Yeah. It's just like you signed up. To serve. And I was like, especially guys from the community, like you served up, you signed up to like potentially give it all. And it's just like, bro, it's like when you're walking around, you're like hobbled over and everything hurts. And you're just, you got the mental health stuff. And it's just like, you're telling me you don't sleep, like all these things. And I was like, bro, like you need to go, go put in a claim or go get checked out first and then like put in a claim. So I think, I want to share like, if people are, if that's something you want to look into or anybody wants to look into, like you should very much look into it. I think everybody should. And I think if there are people around you that are saying like, hey, no, like if they're dissuading you at all, I was like, I think you should, call me, or call somebody else that has like a positive, like, a positive outlook. It's like, I have so much love for the community and like for the people in it. And I'm just like, and it just like, it sucks when guys are like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Or like, oh, I'm fine with this or whatever, because of whatever reason, or, somebody's making them feel that way or the community, I don't know, or they just have that internally. It's like, I want to share, like the VA is very forgiving now. And it's just like very like, and the VA has done enough people in the past, hasn't given them a fair shake. So now it's just like, there are just so many things that are connected and like, yeah, I'm just like, everybody should, really get into that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And just be aware of like the, kind of like those secondary effects thing. I guess Combat Craig does a really good at like, a really good job, of kind of like talking about that stuff. But he's like, dude, he's like, when you go through this stuff and see like what everything's like worth, and it's just like, oh, well, your foot stuff could be your hip stuff or your back stuff, it's just like, and all these things that you had like nobody's a fucking doctor. It's like, so like, are you really going to tell me like this stuff 100% isn't like, connected together and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually just learned one the other day. I was at the dentist and, years and years and years. And, I'd say at least every other year I say something about my lockjaw and they give me a slip of paper and they're like, call this dude. And I'm like, cool, I'll definitely call him. And then I don't know where the paper goes. Yeah. I don't ever ask for it. And so I was asking the lady, I was like, I got to do something. Like, I've got to legit do something now. And she was like, oh, yeah, it's interesting. Like, they actually, like, now the military will do, like, Botox. Because she was like, do you get headaches? I was like, yeah, I get headaches all the time. She's like, yeah, actually the lockjaw, it's interesting because that muscle goes all the way up to here and it pulls on your forehead, and that's another secondary effect. Yes. And so they'll do Botox in very small amounts to help relieve that muscle that's up here that's actually causing that. Wow. Just, that's interesting. It is. It's crazy. And like I've heard, I've got quite a few friends in the same boat that like, one decided not to get anything in this record at all because he didn't want that disability to not allow him to get another job. And I was like, well, that's not how that works.
Definitely not. That is definitely not how that works.
Yeah. But he got out quite a while ago. People were saying that, but now he's like, well, it's been too long. I'm like, no, it hasn't been too long. No. My neighbor, not an EOD guy, he's a retired senior chief, had been out for over 10 years at, I don't even know what percentage, right? But went back all jacked up, ended up having to get like spinal fusion and stuff, and got 100% when he got reassessed. And actually he had a buddy at work and he was like, hey, go to this website and go right here. And he took the mouse and clicked and he's like, all right, you have a year to get it done. Yeah. And he's just like, whoa. So I was like mad at him. By the time he got through, got 100%, and then he did the math and he's like, dude, that's almost $500,000.
Yes.
That I missed out on. Like, so yeah, 100% agree with you. If you're out there and you're hurting, you know, I look at it this way, and it's a little bit depressing when I look at it this way. So I try not to look at it this way for too long. But yeah, dude, I don't have something from getting blown up. You know, I have all my limbs. I have like a lot of those things that a lot of the people we know don't have, right? Mm-hmm. But as I do get older and I start thinking about it, I 100% will not be here on this earth for as long as I would have been if I didn't join this, right? I also am going to fight as long as I can, but will probably be in some form of like movement device. I'm not going to call it a wheelchair yet. Yeah. But at some point, like I'm jacked up, right? And I'm realizing as I get older and all the things we talked about, you know, it hurts for longer and this and that, right? I'm doing a lot of stuff to counter it, but at some point it's gonna catch up. If they're going to give me money for that, right? They can't give me my ability back, right?
Yeah.
But if they're going to give me money to compensate, one, it's never going to be enough money to actually be worth the problems that we have. And nobody's saying go and lie. Just tell them what you actually have.
Yeah.
That's something that, you know, at the strike program that Isabel's been kind of like getting me to understand over the years is that what I think is normal is not normal. Yeah. When I'm like, you know, oh yeah, I've never been able to move my leg that way. And she's like, yeah, well, you should be able to. And I'm like, oh, well, I always have this little pain back here. And she's like, yeah, but most people don't. I'm like, oh, why do you make me feel bad, Isabel? But yeah, 100%, dude. Everyone should go be honest with what you have I would say in the 6 months, like take 6 months, get yourself a journal, and just as you go through the day, write down the things that are wrong with you. And I say that going all the way back to when my dad told me to do that when I was in high school, because you're not going to remember all the stuff that you have throughout, you know, because not everything is with you 24/7. Right. Some things are triggered by one thing or another, right? So write it down. Write down when you get a headache and how frequently. Write down this, that, and the other. And then if you're in, dude, I'm freely saying this and I still have a job. Yeah. So we're like, when I came in, it was don't say anything because you want to get on the team. Don't say anything because you want to stay on the team. Don't say anything because you want to get on another team. I can tell you right now, you're not going to get kicked off that team unless you really need to get kicked off that team.
Right.
And if you want to keep doing this job, it's probably in your best interest to say something so that you can actually get a form of or fully fixed before it gets too far.
Right.
So I think that's a lot of our problems too, is we just don't say anything and then it compounds and then it gets to a point where, all right, well, you're not going to come fully back from this because you waited too long.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Raise my hand.
Yeah. Everything that you just said the last like 2 or 3 minutes is just like so spot on. And I think that's another one of my like, you know, another one of my, I don't know, complaints, you know, with the community is like, I am so glad that I was part of a community where people are like, hey, like there is a time where you know, you shut the fuck up and you push through. Mm-hmm. And I am so glad that I have that. There are times for that. There have been many times for that. There are many times for that. Yep. But then at a certain point, like once we're done with that, you know, that single op or that deployment or whatever, it's like, now you need to take care of yourself. And it's like, and if I have to be the guy to be like, hey man, like you have a fucking family, right? You know, and it's just like, and it's not like you're making, you know, you're lying or you're bringing, it's like you have stuff. And I'll tell you what, you're a phenomenal EOD tech. You're a phenomenal friend. You know, you are a phenomenal dude, you know, but you are horrible at like at telling me, or telling somebody that, hey, this is wrong, or this is a problem, or taking care of yourself from that side. It's cool. You hit the gym, or you're getting your quals, or you're doing what you're supposed to as the LCPO on the team. Whatever your position is, it's like you're doing phenomenal. But I was like, somebody needs to tell you, like, you need to take care of yourself, like that. So I think that's kind of like my, another gripe I have. Like, I'm so thankful that I was part of a community where, that was very much the thing. It's like sometimes you have to push through, and that's just how it is. But then, like, you also need to be able to, like, write that stuff down. It's like you already have it. The difference is like there's only two versions of you, and it's like you have it and you're not getting paid for it, or the VA has said, hey, if you have these things, like, it's our job, we will pay you for it. Like, we will give you a little bit more compensation, like, thank you. That is what that is. So it's like you're either going to have it with no pay, or you're going to have it, it's a little more pay. So,
exactly.
And I'll tell you what, it actually gets kind of like, crazy too. I'm sure everybody's like kind of looked at it. I'll throw in two more things. As I was learning, it was more to just learn about the process. But a buddy, after I got my rating back at 60%, was like, hey, like, do you know they do like increases? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, dude, it's there's a company me and another guy have used, and yada, yada. And here's how increases work. And I was like, hold on. He's like, you should give them a call. And I was like, they have a free consultation. I was like, maybe I can learn something to pass on to everybody else. But I was like, you know what? I'm good. I got my, my back and my shoulder. And I called them, and they're like, hey, like, so this is what we do. This is how we do it. Yada, yada. This is how the VA works. It's like, they expect you for your shit to get worse. It's like, that's how that works. And I was like, okay. And they're like, so send over your stuff and we can take a look at it for you. So I sent it a look, and they're like, hey, so we only have one question for you. Or I guess two questions. They're like, hey, does your shit still hurt? Your back and your shoulder specifically? And I said, yes. They said, since you've gotten out, has it gotten worse at all? And I said, yes. And they're like, okay, that's all we needed. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, that's the requirement for like your increase. Has your shit gotten worse since you've gotten out? And I'm like, well, okay, well, what's that mean? They're like, here's what that means. We do this for hundreds of of clients, and it's like, we can get you to 90%. And I'm like, hold on. I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, yes, this is how. And I went through it, and I was like, you know what? I was like, it was kind of like and it was like pretty like cheap too. It was like you pay like $1,300 up front, and they do everything for you. And then you go see a doc, and then like you come back, and it's like your claim's been open for, I don't know. By the time it hit, maybe it was like 9 months or whatever. But it was like, then like my shit came back. I submitted it like a month and a half later or something like that, maybe a couple months. It was like, oh, hey, you're approved 90%. And I was like, what? and I did it more for like, it was like, I was like, fine, I'll take the extra money. But it was like, it was more to like I made that phone call just to learn more about the process. So when a guy came to me and he's like, hey, like, what's up with these increases, man? Is this something? And I go, and then I was like, well, I made the phone call so I could speak to it. And here's my experience. So all that to say, it's like, if I had like two major things that are like actually a problem for me, and it was like, the VA's like, oh yeah, we got you 90%.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't even do anything. Like, what do you mean? So I all that to say, it's like the VA's, a lot more forgiving and stuff, but yeah. So that's my kind of like gripe. There's a time to be hard, and I was like, but there's also a time to to take care of yourself, and and again, this is another topic, whether it's transitioning, whether it's disability stuff, or whether it's real estate stuff or whatever, or just investing. Like anybody reach out. Like I'd love to talk about this stuff, and I love to just pass on what I've learned or what somebody has shared with me and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of my thing. So
I like it, man. It's a lot of good stuff. It's good to have. It's good to see like somebody that's passionate about it too. Passionate about like the outside of EOD things now, like the investing and the real estate and everything. But then just still has that like passion for the community too. It's good. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. As I said before, God. I was gonna say, I had two more things, but I just something I mentioned before. I was like, I am very aware. I was like, I am the man I am today, because of the community. It was like, yes, it was like cool. I, had some good family and had a good raise, a good upbringing and stuff. But it was like, no, I was like, I am the man I am today. Like, I was like, yeah, because of the community. Yeah. So it's like anything that I can do to help anybody in the community, I feel like not only do I feel like obligated, but like I want to. It's like it's what you do, for your brothers and sisters. So it's like, so yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, you said you had 2 other things you wanted to bring up?
I don't know. I wanted to make sure I brought up a couple things, but yeah, that's fine. That was basically everything.
Okay.
Yeah, that was basically everything.
Well, to kind of close it out, I like to ask if you have anything that you want to kind of like leave to either just anybody listening or the EOD techs that are in.
Anything that I want to leave. I just have a problem. I could just talk all day.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I will say, I think maybe I will throw something out there. I think a lot of people join the community looking for the desert, looking for the war and stuff like that. I'm very thankful for how my career, what that looked like. And I'd say for a lot of guys that, are joining, slightly prior to me at my time, or after, man, it just sucks when you hear, guys guys that are unsatisfied, or guys that are, or are frustrated or mad, or, they want certain things, or things aren't going their way, or, or they thought it'd be different. Mm-hmm. I just want to say, man, I just appreciate, just be appreciative of you have really no idea. I mean, some people have no idea, the quality of human beings. Everybody says, oh, it's the people, but it's no, when you get the fuck out and you work with the Gen Pop, I was like, dude, it was I won't quote the person. I won't name the person that said this, but a guy I was on a team with said, man, the worst dude in our community is the best dude in your community, or the worst in ours is the best in yours. And I'm like, dude, you guys shouldn't take that shit from for granted. And if it's and I'd say if you're a one and done, or if you're a 6 or 8 or 10 or 12, it doesn't matter. I think I've realized that when I can find other people in real estate, that's where I'm in, other people that were, high achievers, or other guys that were, prior whatever, some special operations or whatever, just some, phenomenal human beings. I'm like, man, I was if you guys aren't getting the, the deployments or the whatever, I don't know. I guess I want to say don't sleep on the people that you're, that you have in the community here. I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential outside of it's don't let this, I guess the job, don't let it kind of turn you off, or don't let it, don't let it, I don't know. Words,
yeah,
they go. So I think there's a lot of potential, both if the Navy isn't exactly what you're looking for and stuff there's still ways stay, yeah, make sure you stay connected with right. guys that you served with, and after the fact, I know, NSOF's got a lot of stuff going on and stuff. I don't even know all the stuff they have going on, but I think just yeah, I don't have anything.
No, I think that's good, man. I think sometimes when we get too focused down one road, it's good to just come back to the people. Just reach out. I know that's most of our hardest thing to do is just reach out to people, but just reach out, say hi. You don't need anything from anybody. You don't have to need something from somebody, and you don't have to give something to somebody.
Yeah.
Literally, the conversation is all that's needed and all that's given, and that literally can make people stay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming and taking a nice long 3-hour drive to come down here and have a conversation. Yeah, man, as you start building up those houses, we'll have to do this again as you start, building your portfolio. And
for sure.
That'd be awesome.
And I want to say thank you. Seriously, I know I'd reached out a couple months ago or whatever, listened to a couple episodes. Huge shout out to you, and huge shout out to everybody that's been on, that you've had on before. There's a ton of guys I've never met. And I was like, and I kind of mentioned this before. I was like, after listening to some of these episodes, I just like, dude, I fucking love listening to this, you know. And it's just like, man, it's just like, I don't know, like some of the guys, you know, like Scott, Kyle, and like Jay. I was like, dude, like, I just want to hit you up like right now. Like, hey, give me their contact information. Be like, hey man, like I'm Dan. Like, just want to introduce myself. Like, dude, I just love listening to you. Like, thanks for taking that time. So, like, I've kind of gotten into some like video editing stuff and all this. So, I know it is a lot. And it's just like, and I see like every episode how it's just got better and better and better. And I think you're doing a phenomenal job. So I just want to like thank you for this opportunity and thank you for what you're doing. So I know it's not easy.
I appreciate that. I really do. It's good to hear that it is appreciated and that the goal of the podcast is actually coming true, which is I want people to be able to listen and be like, I feel that meant something, you know?
Yeah.
Not what I have, but what y'all have. So I do appreciate it. All right, man. That, let's see, 2.5 hours. Nice.
Thank you for listening to the Echo Oscar Delta podcast, where we talk to Navy EOD techs and hear the stories that they want to share.